All right, this is planning board, December 13th. We originally were gonna have a hearing for 105 Vaughan Hill Road, but it's gonna be continued, so.
I'll move that based on the applicant's request, we will be reschedule a hearing to January 10th at 8:30.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous. All right, 339 Long Hill Road, common driveway.
John Beckman, I'm a building contractor representing the consultant family.
So you're here to request a bond, so request a reduced bond. Yeah, and to approve the bond amount, right?
Yeah, I think there's a process even without me, right, that you present Fred's comments or the bond amount is approved.
Yeah, so we
And
got,
my comments are
That's
subsequent to
part of
that, or how we proceed?
so we got your document showing what you suggest. I think we got an email from Fred saying that it looked good, right? And then we got the email from the owners requesting the reduction in the bond.
It's not a reduction, it's a waiver from the 1.5 markup.
Yeah, they wanted 100%.
Yeah, so I won't speak until you say no.
And then Fred also commented on that waiver in that email,
Yeah.
in which he approved the bond amount.
Yeah.
So John, do you want to just quickly walk us through the bonding?
Yeah, I don't think there's really any contention or lengthy discussion merited by the amounts. I went back and forth with Fred for a while, and we're on the same page as to the validity and of the numbers represented here. It's a big, long driveway, so it adds up to a fair amount. I think the walk through here is kind of water under the bridge in that it represents the work that was on the drawing that was approved here X number of months ago. There's some tree clearing, there is some trench and drainage work, and there's some retention ponds, and there's quite a bit of gravel bed, and then $32,000 worth of pavement and some signs. So it's not really drastically different from other common driveway projects that go in. So I think we kind of crossed that river whereby the planning board can now approve the bond. And the only, the comment I'd like, or request I'd like to represent my clients about here before the board is their idea or proposal that the board think, however briefly, about the possibility of them providing 100% bond as opposed to the stipulated 150% bond. And their idea is that in many cases, these common driveways, and having done them myself, are put in on a speculative basis with a developer opening some land, building several homes. Whereas that part of the formula is removed here. And this is a homeowner fixing up the driveway and able to access their approved project. So we don't have a situation where a market could change, a house or two doesn't sell, a builder gets in trouble, as happens to us once in a while, and money runs out and somebody's left holding the ball with an unfinished driveway. This driveway is also not a raw land development project. The driveway exists right now, almost foot for foot. It's being upgraded at some great expense. But the owner wanted to propose to the board that the risk to the town is slightly diminished, and perhaps the board would consider diminishing the bond. And in addition or in lieu of that, a secondary proposal would be, if that is not seen as considerable by the board, if the board would entertain the thought of allowing Fred to inspect and therefore release any completed portions of the work during the project, simply as a means to help the clients with liquidity during the project.
So we actually do that, right? And we review, and then things that checked off the list, we reduce the bond.
As the project moves along.
So that's on the
That's
table?
certainly a
Okay.
possibility.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. As long as Fred goes out and he reviews.
Well, of course,
Yeah,
yeah, we'd all be
and
subject to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it'd be some extra expense to have Fred go out.
Right.
Well, I
So
think
it's
that's
kind of,
that's
you know,
borne by the client as well.
It is, I'm just, you know, so
No, I
it's not
understand.
it's not a
But
free.
it could be a trade-off, if you get, you
Yeah.
know,
Yep.
cost $500 for Fred and you get 30 grand.
Yeah, that's a big
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah, working capital,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we definitely do that.
Yeah, okay.
But on the 1.5 to 1, you know, so what Fred said is he thought that it would be setting a precedent. Well, this was his full comments. Did you get this email? Were you on it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I see your points too. I mean,
Yeah, I mean-
is there any opinions on the board?
Well, I respect the fact that exactly the couple points you pointed out. One, the owner is doing this, it's an existing driveway. You know, did I read that it's going to be done within 12 months?
Oh, yeah.
So it's, we don't anticipate this going long.
Yeah, no,
term.
we are, the building is being permitted as we speak, and, you know, not that it matters to the board, but I have a signed contract to finish the house in a lot less time than 12 months.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I mean, I guess I'm a little hung up on the setting the precedent and want to hear from other people, but all of the other reasons to reduce it, I'm okay with. I mean, I think it makes sense of the reason why we do the 1.5 multipliers, if it goes longer, if we have an unknown, you know, contractor doing it, you know, all of the unknowns that you would typically have where you don't have the owner that's doing the driveway. So, to me, I'd be open to reducing it, but I'm a little worried about the setting the precedent on that. That's the only thing that's hanging me up.
I'm okay with the partial releases. I mean, especially where I mean, it's actually listed here. I mean, it's both the drainage work and some site work and the driveway. So it's kind of several different aspects of the project all kind of rolled into this one. And they're all driveway related, but they're all kind of, you know, mingled in here a little bit. You know, so I'd be okay with, you know, partial releases. I'm not sure I really want to set the precedent. I mean, nothing against your clients, but I mean, if, you know, unless they have this money sitting in the bank, you know, I mean, if the stock market tanks or, you know, whatever, something happens, and they say, hold on, let's stop this project, you know, we have cash issues and we're, you know, stop, you know, which, I mean, could happen. You know, it's happened.
No, it
It's
couldn't.
happened. No, never. Yeah, let's see. Trail green. But you know, so there's exactly. So I mean, yeah, I mean, if something happened, and for whatever reason they wanted to freeze the project, and we have two other homeowners that are also affected on that driveway. You know, which, you know, I kind of look at it, you know, I mean, so if you get partway done and then they say freeze, and now, you know, what's the state with the other two owners? And how do they make sure that they have good access? So that's kind of my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't know the history of the 1.5 multiplier, but I mean, if that's...
I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to if the town had to go and contract it out, you know, we may not get somebody, you know, is cheap, or, you know, they may say, oh, it's the town doing it, so we're gonna, you know, bump up our quote
Yep.
some.
And-
So we want some margin in there so that we can, you know, make
Or
sure it
do
gets
it later.
finished without, you know,
Right, exactly.
yeah, or it might be
That's
2 or
fine.
3 years from now that it gets done, so.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not comfortable reducing that.
Okay. Well, it sounds like I'm pretty much in favor of not reducing it, but we'll definitely do the partial release, and I think the numbers are good, so we could probably approve the bond amount, right? We don't need to have a vote?
Oh, we do, yeah.
No, I know on the bond amount, but I'm saying on the...
On the waiver?
On the
Yes,
waiver.
I think I'm both.
Okay.
I would vote on both.
Because was there an official request?
Yes, the email was the official request.
guess the motion would be to require a bond of $210,045.
Well, so first make a motion to deny the request.
Okay. Deny the request. Okay, I'll make a motion that we deny the request to remove the additional 50% multiplier on the bond amount.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
So, suppose they require a bond amount of
Yeah.
$210,045
Yeah.
and allow partial releases as if Fred approves the work.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Very good, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah.
And, you know, I understand the board's positions, I have to advocate for my client,
Yeah.
but I understand the
Yeah.
board's
Yeah.
position completely, and thank you very much for considering.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Tricia Gray is here to talk about the master plan and her work she's been working.
Great, thank you very much for your time. So since our last meeting, I think it was late September, I may be wrong about the date, we convened, I made a presentation for a joint meeting of the Board of Selectmen and the Advisory Committee for sponsorship or co-sponsorship, if you will, of a committee, a steering committee to design and launch the master plan update and strategic planning. And if you recall from our last meeting, I had suggested I was going to do that. I mean, the issue was, is this something the planning board wants to do on its own? Or do you want to engage sponsorship of the Board of Selectmen or Advisory Committee? Advisory Committee came back and said, listen, constitute a committee, we're happy to set up a liaison, we'll be actively in support of you. And by the way, individual members of the Advisory Committee acting on their own have been very instrumental in helping me get this far with this process, so I really appreciate their help. But as a committee, they can't constitute subcommittees. And so then it was left to the Board of Selectmen to say, is it something that we should get involved in to constitute a committee? And the arguments for were, and this is what I seek your advice on, reason why I wanted to consider bringing in the Board of Selectmen is, one, other towns do it that way sometimes, and there are reasons for it, because the concern is that the scope of the project can sometimes go beyond what is traditionally expected of the planning board. By law, the responsibility that is vested in the planning board, but even in the master plan itself, and also some of the issues that come up when you start to dig below the surface, they might go beyond your jurisdiction. So that's the second reason. Third reason is, and this is my lack of knowledge about how town governance works, but from what I understand of the org structure, Erica has 2 or 3 masters, or 5,500, depending on how you look at it. Then you've got a town administrator to report to, you've got a couple of boards. And I think for a project of this structure, of this size, you need the engagement and support, not just of Erica, but you need town administration on board. And so what I was debating is, and frankly, I think as a technical matter, and I may be wrong about this, I think, or as a practical matter, I think the town administrator sees the Board of Selectmen as, their main direct report. I think in corporate terms, who reports to who, and I'm still struggling with how town government works. And so I thought, well, if you get the Board of Selectmen on board, then you resolve that issue. Everybody knows it's a priority, and so if you have any issues allocating your time, it's well documented, everyone's on board, and we're all in support of the same effort. And I'll also mention that other towns actually issue press releases. So, for example, Northborough often is looked to as a paradigm of top corporate governments. They are updating their master plan right now. They issued a press release on the constitution of their committee. Littleton just updated their master plan. They had the board involved. It was a big deal. Now, so the question is, and that's what I'm going to ask you about before. I've got a proposal for each, but we've also drafted a potential communication you could make to the Board of Selectmen if you decide to go that option. And again, I want to thank Brian Boyle in particular, who was very instrumental in helping me. You know, I get into the weedy details, and frankly, he helped me draft it. And so I really appreciate that effort. But I'd like to, you know, invite your thoughts about whether to do it, and whether and when to engage the Board of Selectmen. They've got a meeting on the 21st. I know I can't make that meeting myself. You know, the
December
question-
21st?
December, believe it or not. And then I think their next meeting will be January 4th, January 18th.
The meeting in December is not a real meeting. It's a meeting, but it's like one small 5-minute item, and that's
Oh.
it, so.
Okay, got it, because I was thinking, boy, dedication.
I know.
But I think, I know I'm taking my grandchildren to an event, so I'm just thinking. So just to dial back, I've also evolved a bit in my own thinking of the master plan, which is kind of the danger of letting me hang on to it for too long. You can take it on many different levels. We talked about, I thought, I naively, that, you know, in one sense, because you've done so much good work, Eric could just take some of the legwork I've done, just write it up and mail it in. The reality is, when you think about all the politics, all the contentious issues that are involved, and all the things that if we really want to do this right, we want to peel back the onion, try to do something that's meaningful, as opposed to something we just want to stick on the shelf and forget. We've got to deal with tax moderation issues. We've got to deal with land use issues of various forms, whether it's affordable housing, which frankly was a huge theme in the original master plan, and it was reflective of the times, where there was a lot of fear of development and a lot of erroneous data around that, which needs to be updated. We also need to deal with what's the real arguments for, you know, what are we doing with open space? What are we doing with our open space recreation plan? What kind of a budget do we want to put around it and plan for the future? How do we want to, you know, plan for growth that's inevitable and reflect the existing demographics that suggest that we're not going to be as intensively focused on, you know, densely populated with families with children who are going to put burdens in our school, hypothetically. So, for example, the old master plan has an extensive argument, which I believe is not fully vetted and should be updated, supporting outright purchase of open space without fully vetting all the implications of how this town in particular has an issue about how the tax levy burden resulting from that is allocated between commercial and residential, for example. So there are a lot of issues. There's a need to update it, not just for the legal issues of which Erica is fully aware, but there's also, taxpayers have a right to know what is the town's position on all these issues. And some of them go beyond, you guys are like the ever-ready Bonnie, you're like producing so much work, and you checked off all the boxes for everything you're supposed to do. But there are all these broader issues that I think we're fighting for as a town, and we need to be able to deal it with a global perspective. And I see Eric nodding because I feel a kindred spirit in Eric of just seeing his work on tax revenue, other sources of income, which was just exactly the kind of education, the kind of focus, level of detail, attention to detail, and understanding of an issue, and then taking that and sharing it with people in town who really need to understand this. And from my world, I almost think there are alternate universes in Bolton sometimes. There's the neighbors I know, and I certainly am one of them, I want hard facts. I want to be able to look at the factual basis for all the issues that are driving decisions in town. I want to air them fully. Let's have an open debate. Let's not do it on isolated issues such as the one we just experienced with Camp Virginia, but let's try to play it forward and put some planning in place. And that, in my view, is the talisman for, you know, the absolute demonstration that we're looking for what I think is good management. I mean, it's just, you know, a properly managed town or an organization. I'd like to kind of bring that principle forward and try to apply it in Bolton.
So yeah, so what you were saying, we definitely clearly need to address the master plan.
Yeah.
I think like you said, the advisory is probably not the place to do it since they
Yeah.
don't create it. But I don't know if we do it, or Board of Selectmen does it, or we do it jointly, but what we would do is create a committee,
Yeah,
and
right,
it would almost, I wouldn't say it would be an interview process, but we'd have to say, you know, we need a financial person, we need a planning person,
yep,
you know, kind of have like prescribed slots.
exactly.
So it could be a fully vetted document and not a specific, weighted by a specific group in town on
Exactly.
either side or anything.
Exactly,
So,
definitely right on.
so I don't know if it's a joint selectmen and planning board, you know, that
I think it would be,
appoints these positions or what? I don't know.
Well, you have to advertise, and so this is
Well, of
what I
course,
now
of
understand.
course, yeah.
But that, you've hit exactly on the key issue, because I almost thought, I was under the mistaken impression that you could actually decide, okay, we want a planner, we want a this, we want a that, and let's get them from the town, let's interview people and fill the slots. As I understand it, you have to advertise.
Oh,
So it's
yeah.
very important to be very specific about the
Well,
criteria.
you have to advertise, but then you could pick from those that come forward.
Exactly, but I think when you advertise, you don't want to mislead people. You want to.
For sure, yeah.
You want to have a sort of, it's like an iterative process where you have to kind of think, what are the big issues we're going to deal with? Affordable housing, you know, tax,
Mhm.
planning generally, and then put people on the committee. And that, so how you describe those positions going in, and that's why, you know, I mentioned it, that there's a draft memo to the Board of Selectmen if you decide to go this way, which includes a charge to the committee that you could consider. I'm sorry, it just came in today.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's so
I don't
late.
think we got it.
But I think this is something you need to think about, and then in that, I only started to hint at the criteria you'd look for in residents, and I just put planning, you know, and then I thought, you know, commitment to factual research and
Yeah.
reporting. You know, let's keep it unbiased, you know, that was what that was designed to do. In addition, though, Eric, if I can jump ahead, I also called MAPC.
Mhm.
So MAPC, so you can go, other towns will spend anywhere from $75,000 to $150,000 to hire their own independent consultant, which is what the town did 10 years ago. MAPC can facilitate. And you can, if you do that, and I presume, and you don't have to go through the 30B process or anything like that. And and interestingly enough, the guy I spoke with is also the guy who's currently looking at OSRP. So I asked him, hey, could you help us? And is there a way that we could strike a deal where combined grant funding and, you know, maybe we pay forward in kind, or,
Mhm.
you know, I could help you move your, you know, is there a way that you could help us both facilitate and then also facilitate getting grant funding?
Mhm.
Which also, by the way, starts to crack at some of the revenue issues you're talking
Right,
about.
yeah.
By the way, he also ticked off a whole long list of grants we might be eligible for.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so there's a lot of thinking around that, and I think what I like about this group is that you're already thinking about these issues. Frankly, Board of Selectmen aren't fully around it yet, and there's going to be a new chair in January, so the question is, how is it going to impact your decision? But if you feel that you can get the resources from town administration to help Erica, this committee, anyone who gets involved in this committee, so it doesn't fail,
Yeah.
then I'm all for it, because I think you guys we're thinking exactly along the same lines.
So I think,
Otherwise, we need.
I think the way forward is probably a memo similar like this from the planning board to the Board of Selectmen
Mhm.
with a charge for the master planning committee.
Sure.
And I mean, I haven't read this yet,
Yeah, I know, I'm
but,
so sorry.
but, you know, to list out what we think needs to be addressed.
Yep.
And to list
Right,
the types of, you know, what's the qualified to be on it. And
I
then,
love it.
I don't even know if we could have like a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen to appoint people. I mean, that's probably the path forward, and then it's probably a year or multiple, I don't know that, I don't.
2 year.
Yeah, it's probably a 2-year process. I mean.
And
last
also the
one took
funding
4.
comes in
Huh?
that way?
The last one took 4,
Yeah.
and I did 2 years of work before that.
You did really, I'd like to find out who you are. And actually, the funding, they were telling me that the funding wouldn't come in one chunk either. So it's best to,
But
but realistically,
yeah.
it killed the last committee that did this. I mean,
Yeah.
basically, people were just dropping off like flies. And so if we
Well,
want
it's a
to,
four-year process.
Sorry.
I kind of
I'm glad
understand
you,
why.
I mean, I think, I mean, I haven't talked to you about it, but I talked to a bunch of other people. It was tough, keeping it going.
I've got all the files, it was very tough.
Okay, I definitely want to get your information. So, yeah, so that's one of the, so the scope of the master plan is critical. And I mean, there's a bunch of other things other than these big issues which are very contentious. You know, there's also, they're all contentious, frankly. I mean, when you talk about the 117 traffic issues, that's in the master plan. So how do we coordinate all that? And so the idea is have the committee, but then you'd have these separate task forces. And the question is, how do you, okay, so the steering committee, you have open meeting law. Question is whether the individual task force also have to be subject to open meeting laws or not, or they just get it done. It's a question we need to research.
Well, I think if it's its own committee, you
Yeah.
have meetings, and yes, but you could have subcommittees that are
Yeah.
below quorum.
Yeah,
Okay.
that are not-
So instead of having separate groups of quorum, if you have like, I don't know, 7, 9, 11 person committee, and then you, so that would be, so if it was 11, say, which the EDC has, 6 is the quorum, so you can have 3 or 4 person subcommittees that go up and do. It's kind of like how the school board works.
Okay,
They have their board, and then they have the finance subcommittee,
okay.
technology, they have other subcommittees that meet. I think they do this, I think they still have posted meetings, but I'm not sure if they're like, I don't know all the rules for school.
I always thought it was, if you have at least 2, could be considered a deliberation. It depends on how broad, but
Well,
whatever.
I think that's in the selectmen's case, yes, because they only have
There's
3.
only 3.
Yeah, okay,
But, for instance, there's 5 of us here, 2 of us could talk.
okay.
3
Wow,
of us can't, but 2 of us can.
that's great.
And that's actually one of the arguments for a 5-person board of selectmen is,
Yeah,
you come into these selectmen meetings kind of cold. It's they've never
Yeah.
really talked, or they shouldn't have talked.
yeah,
Whereas if you had a bigger board, there could be a little bit of conversation outside. But then again, you need, there's other issues with 5-person boards too.
Eric, that brings up another issue, which I don't want to cloud the issue, but you know what, sometime we ought to think about a charter, a home rule charter, which deals with just those issues, because I've been thinking about those too. But first, the master plan,
Yeah.
because it could be dangerous putting you and me together, because I think we start generating a lot of work for other people.
Just to-
But we're definitely on board on this, okay?
I think just to get back to your original question of, should this be joint or should it just be solely on the planning board? I mean, I would think we'd absolutely want to have a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen and
Yeah,
have
yeah.
it,
Okay,
have some input with them as this moves forward. I mean, the more input we can get from other people, throughout the town,
yeah,
early on. I mean,
Yes,
it's
yes.
an arduous process. It's going to be,
right,
certainly not simple, but again, the more vetting that can be done,
Yeah.
makes it a little bit easier down the end of the road. So I would say this
Yeah.
absolutely should be a joint commitment on both
Yeah.
the planning board and the board of selectmen.
I like that. There's also a difference in working styles. Like, I will tell you, the more I've shared my working copy with everybody, people freak out when they look at it. And people have adverse reactions. And so you're gonna have to deal with a little bit of, I kept thinking, oh, I'll work with one other person, I'll be able to, get all this work done and all that. It's a lot to build consensus, and that's why I was thinking we really need facilitation. And that's why I'd like to, I was thinking if, and this is what happened, I think, in September, you looked over at me and you said, we really want you to start this committee. And when I thought through all the issues involved and all the resistance I've gotten to date, it will fail if I just do it. And so, and I know what the task is. So without trying to overcomplicate it, I think this is an opportunity to really tackle some of these tough issues. I also think, I hope you saw my little letter to the editor where I really tried to
I read
work
that.
with it. Oh, good.
Paper.
I'm such a fan of this committee, and I just think it's an opportunity for this committee to get acknowledged for what you're doing and to form.
Yeah, I saw the call out.
What was that?
I saw your call out.
Okay, good.
Well, and I also like the idea of bringing MAPC in on it and having kind of like they're almost like a third-party overseer that can help facilitate some of that stuff.
And and on the planning board, we've been using MAPC.
NBC's done a lot of work with
Yeah,
us,
yeah.
so that's,
Yeah.
They have,
that's
but
rich.
now, it's not free. So I asked them
We
to
had
give me
grant, we
alternate.
had grant funding though, right?
You can get grant funding
Yes.
if it's available.
Yes.
And I don't know about in-kind match, I think possibly in-kind match.
He's thinking about it. So
Okay.
Ralph Wilmer, sorry,
Okay.
is the guy I've talked to. He also told me that the notices for concepts is coming out shortly. They do it biannually. So once I get it, I'll share it with you. I don't know what your schedule's like, but we can talk, because I think there are creative ways to get around this. And let's get as much funding as we can, not just for this, but let's get it for housing. No,
Yeah, I mean,
sky's the limit.
Just to put it in perspective,
Yeah.
MAPC assisted us with the village, the
Mhm.
mixed-use village overlay district.
Yeah,
They're working with us on updating our hazard mitigation plan.
got it.
And there's a bunch of other things that I'm forgetting, but they know Bolton well.
Yeah, and the guy I talked to was looking at the OSRP as we were
Oh,
speaking. He said he
yeah.
promised he was gonna get to it this week.
Yeah.
So the other thing too, and I think it's important to integrate work I've done, work you've done. There's a lot of other, a lot of people with a lot of independent motivation that want to share information. And if we can do an outreach to pull it together and say, okay, let's come to an agreement on this. And so this is why I'm also saying, my expectations for this project look high, and maybe it's too high, but I would love to try to create a forum where we can deal with things.
So I think that's the plan. I think we're pretty packed the next couple of months, right, with hearings and stuff. So maybe in the March, April timeframe, we can go through this, create.
Once the warrant gets
Yeah, that's what I was
I got it.
thinking.
Got it,
Yeah.
guys.
I mean, between subdivisions and bylaws, we're pretty packed for the next couple of months.
Okay.
I think springtime, we can certainly
Yeah.
jump on
Yeah.
this for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Work on this charge and then start working with the
Realistically,
board of
we're just
selectmen.
so busy right now.
I know.
It's hard to
We
get
have a lot of
this
updating.
I'll ping you a little bit, just to make sure you have the information I have, but also just push back and let me know, and I'll try to put,
I will
keep
do
it.
as much as I can, it's just we're really busy.
No, I understand.
So, yeah.
I think the other issue that's big is engaging local town residents. And that serves the dual function of, let's make it a truly democratic process. And then also, frankly, you guys need to get credit from more residents for understanding what you're doing. I thank you very much for your
Thank you.
time.
Thank you.
I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
This is good.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you.
MAPC is also helping us with complete streets right now.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, my jacket, I'm shivering.
Thank you. We need these yours. Or maybe doing some fiber and stuff.
All right, who we got? So Sean and Dillis here for the A&R plan for 6B3. Jesus. So this is so you can get money? Is that what this is for?
Correct, yeah.
So this has nothing to do with the subdivision plan, it's just to show value?
Well, yeah, we closed on this site maybe 6 months ago, and we have some financial commitments that we need to make, and so we're putting some financing in place.
Is this one? That's
Yeah,
right.
I think.
All right,
Yeah.
I need to recuse myself. On the butter.
Sure. So we've gotten to the point where we have some financial obligations, and we pay for it out of pocket, but we have to finance it to cover part of the acquisition. And so that's the point of the A&R plan.
Basically, looking at the major residential bylaw, we've stayed under that. And it's similar to what we did over on Hudson Road. So we're just showing 5 frontage lots here along Main Street. All conventional lots consisting of greater than 80,000 square feet, greater than 200 feet of frontage. We meet the 150-foot minimum at the 100-foot setback. Pretty straightforward, all frontage lots. A couple of these are over the 4.5 acres, so they don't need to comply with the lot of regularity. These 3 do, and obviously they're regular lots and everything complies. Pretty straightforward.
So we had to do the same thing on 258 Hudson Road.
Correct,
Right.
yeah.
So So it's the same situation.
Exactly, yeah.
No problem. It's just
It's just-
procedural.
yeah.
It's just paper.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then, so, for the appraisal for the bank, it has to, they need it to, for value to relate to the A&R plans as opposed to just a unpermitted parcel.
Yeah.
And so this is, we need this to close the loan.
Any other comments? Okay.
I think it's,
You want to make a motion?
yeah, we approve the A&R plan for,
6.B3.
6.B3, with the, on the plan shown by Ducharme Dillis on November 30th, 2017.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll see you in January.
Okay, sign this, yeah.
And then also, is it possible for you to assign time extension for the actual hearing?
I think, actually, the email that's you?
You just sign it now.
Okay,
and
you
I'll-
have it in there,
Okay.
So January 10th, just get you guys. Is that what we're doing?
For the definitive plan?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
That's fine. We look, man down to,
yeah, no, we understand. That'll work fine.
Thank you. Wonderful, thank you.
Thanks for sending these two.
Oh, yeah, no
Personal
problem.
information, what are those, so we can send them.
Is there some sort of sidewalk or site visit tomorrow?
There is with the Trails Committee.
In the trails?
Yeah.
Yes.
What is
It's
it?
the work, right?
Yeah, is it?
It's at 3:45.
Oh, yeah, no, I can make that. I'm working like 60 hours a week right now.
Oh, my God.
Barely see my kids.
do you have to sign this one? Sorry. The bottom one somewhere? Oh, it's not.
Oh, I hope everyone has
We were gonna do it.
Wait, what?
Oh, we're not doing that.
Trick or treat. That's all right, yes. We always got
See that? See what they just did there? Snuck in the
A little Goose Pond path.
That's right.
I don't have a full copy.
Sign. Guess we don't need to.
You're just gonna put a couple more under.
Yeah. Advertise for that position that we need.
Actually, there's a couple of candidates that they're probably going to be coming forward in
In
January.
January, okay.
Oh, it's right there.
I think somebody's going to be here for hearings.
Yeah.
Riveting television.
Yeah.
All right. Walter Erickson for 147 Long Hill Road.
Okay.
Request for bond reduction.
And I'm in the butter, so I'm using myself.
Oh, you get to sit down.
Yeah.
All right. They play musical chairs.
All right. Good evening, Kevin Erickson. We have Walter Erickson could not be here this evening.
Okay.
Here for a bond reduction. You'll recall the original bond amount on this project was $106,455. We did include, I believe, yes, you have copies of the breakdown of that bond. We did receive Fred Hamway's email of December 8th suggesting that the board retain $21,750 in bond amount. I'd like to go over that figure with the board as it pertains to a few of the items that he's suggesting the board retain, because we do think it's excessively high by about $16,000.
All right, hold on, let me just get my bearings straight, because we have a lot of documents now.
Sure.
So this one
I think it's
is,
the second one,
Yeah.
third page.
yeah, I had that, but I was just looking at what the rest was. So this is,
That's probably the best page to look at, and I can go over it with.
so where is the Fred's note saying?
So there's an email from Fred,
Yeah. I-
That's the top one.
and his notes are
The first page
itemized.
Oh,
of that
okay.
one.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right, well, let's go through your stuff and then we'll go through Fred's after, I guess.
Sure. So, a lot of Fred's items we don't take issue with. They tend to be some of the smaller items, outstanding items. The first one, I guess, if you look at item number 3, regarding the top course of hot top, Fred's suggesting a 25% holdback there, so $3,200, because it was misting, I guess, as he categorized it, for a portion of about 300 feet of that application. He did witness the entire application. It was not raining, it was a mist. It was a perfectly appropriate time to lay down the top course. And it's been down now and driven on, and there's no issues. There was a tack put down beforehand on the binder coat, which Fred noted in his report, his inspection report. So, we don't feel that any amount is needed to be retained. That work is completed now, and this is a performance bond.
Is there any testing that's required to be done of the pavement once it's installed?
No.
There's no testing.
Well, I can move down, why don't we go through the whole
Just keep going.
list? Yeah. So if you go to 14, Fred's suggesting a $1,500 holdback there, having to do with fill structural, behind the structural wall. He had suggested that fill be removed and replaced with structural fill, and we were to provide a letter from an engineer. I don't know if
I have
you
not
received
received
that
that.
yet, but that will be forthcoming. That's a structural wall, so it's a freestanding wall. It doesn't need any backfill of any kind. It's got rebar and steel through its base and frame, and without any fill there, it would hold itself up. So there's no need to remove that fill, so retaining money to remove that fill and replace it isn't necessary. What I would suggest, since the letter has not been submitted yet, that if the board's inclined to agree to that release, it could do so subject to staff reviewing that letter stamped by an engineer pertaining to the structural integrity of that wall. 17, I don't know why there would be a holdback for cleaning pavement on a common driveway. It's only $250, but it just, you don't clean hot top after the final coat's been put down. It's just not something that would be done. And then this is probably the biggest one, number 20. It's the only other item that we have issue with is
Fred suggesting a 50% holdback on the landscaping, but all plantings have been completed at this point except for 35 low bush blueberry bushes, which Fred had earlier estimated the cost of at $875. So we think it'd be appropriate to hold back $875, but to suggest that $12,425 should be held back for the installation of 35 blueberry bushes is excessive.
Just to go back on your number 17, where you were talking about the pavement, his comment was probably have to be cleaned after the spring work has been done. Typically when the road is installed, if there's still construction work going on, you can get sediment on the road, and I believe that's what Fred's getting at, is just needs to be street swept. Is that my understanding? Is that what he's?
What have you been doing for cleaning in the past? Is it-
For a common driveway? I don't think, I mean, this isn't a, remember, this isn't a subdivision road.
Okay, all right.
It's
yeah.
just a common
Yeah,
driveway.
Yeah.
We wouldn't
So
street
does-
sweep.
What is the
Yeah.
$500 entail? So it's not street sweeping? What is
I'm
it?
not even sure why that was ever requested to be withheld, but I think it was, originally itemized and, because of its size, I guess it was acquiesced to, but at this point, to hold back, I don't want to make too big of a deal out of $250. I have bigger issues with the other line items. It just is, from our perspective, it's not something we would do in a common driveway.
So, what Fred says here, says there are no plantings behind the wall. It does not appear that all the plantings have been installed along the stormwater berms and between station 3 and 4 on the right side. The designer should submit a certification that all plantings have been installed. So, he's not saying just, I don't know exactly, do you know what he's referring to based on those notations, Erica? 300 and 400?
Which comment are you referring to?
20 on the plantings.
Oh, those are the stations along the road. So if you look at the plan, between station 300 and 400, that's
Okay.
the area that he's referring to.
And is that just the blueberry bushes that,
I would have to look at the plan. I don't know if they called out specifically which, the species for each plant in that area.
because I just don't know exactly what he's talking about is what you're saying here, so.
Yeah, my understanding is that everything has been planted except for those 35 blueberry bushes.
And what did you say the price was approximately for the 35 blueberry?
$875. Total.
For those?
Yes.
And when did the plantings get installed?
Yeah.
What date?
That, I don't have a precise date on that.
It had Galloway's inspection report actually
Okay.
in your packet. He may have noted it
I mean, typically when you install plantings, they have a warranty for a year.
So he's asking for a letter from the installer. Right, in both his
Yeah,
inspection report and then the follow-up.
yeah, that's
Right.
his
I
note.
think there's two letters. One, there needs to be a letter from
That's
an engineer
the
with
engineer.
regard to
Yeah.
the wall.
Under
Um,
plantings, though, yeah.
And then the second one would just be there needs to be a letter from the designer noting that the plantings have been installed per the planting plan.
So there is a letter from the nursery.
Oh, do we have it?
Where's-
It is in your packet. So they certify that the week of November 20th, they planted 14 trees and 70 shrubs.
Oh, okay. The only species were emitted were the 35 low bush blueberries that were not available.
So when were these planted? In December?
What was the
November.
total planting line item,
$26,000 it looks like, which included the install.
which included,
So these plants can be planted in December and,
Well, it looks like they were planted in November.
Yeah, they were planted in November,
Yeah.
just saying in the spring,
Yeah.
these other ones need to be
yeah.
planted.
I mean, typically what I've seen on, like, what we've had contractors do is, you hold back 5% for a retainage or something like that. So, I mean, if we were to hold back 5% of the total planting
plan, it's a little bit more than the 875, but it's around 1,300. And that at least covers your
And they do
875.
5% to see that they survive? or-
Yeah, it's basically, I mean, yeah, because, I mean, they should be warranted for 1 year anyways. Most plants always are from a nursery. But that gives you a little bit of a buffer if a few of them don't make it and they need to be, I mean, they should be replaced anyways, but, I mean, I think that would be reasonable to recommend.
Maybe we should do the 875 and then 5% of the rest, since 875 hasn't been done. Either way, I guess.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we have a letter here showing that
Yeah,
the majority of it's been installed.
Yeah.
okay, yeah, that's fine.
So if you'd be amenable to just
We would be
leaving
minimal.
that to 5%, making that 13, and even 1,300, that kind of cuts that cost down a little bit more.
So change.
1,300 is 5%.
I think so, that's what I just.
Is there time when we can make some comments on this? Where the...
Yeah, we'll.
Okay, okay.
You said 26,000?
Yes, yep.
26.6.
26.
Oh, yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, you're right, it's 1,330.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I mean, what's your opinion on the condition that the road was put down on?
Oh, well, I mean, typically asphalt, you know, you want it above 50 degrees when it's being placed, so it's, where are we?
So it doesn't sound like it's, you know, that outlandish to have 25% held back just to see how that holds up.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little tough, because if no testing is required, I mean, typically you're not gonna see the deterioration of the road for a while.
Oh, okay.
It's not like something you're gonna see next year. But if we don't require any testing,
Well, I would say that too, again, you know, Mr. Hamlin was there, he observed the
he observed it when it was,
yes.
when it was being installed.
Yes,
I would agree with that, but at the same token, the board did allow for an extension for the paving, because typically we don't allow for paving after November 15th. So I think as a fail-safe, I think it's very reasonable to say that we're holding back some of that.
but for how long? And I guess what would be the standard? Because, you know, if the date is an arbitrary date, obviously you need to have a bright line rule when you don't want paving afterwards. But the date has nothing to do with the paving, the temperature has to do with the paving, and the weather conditions
Yeah.
have to do with the paving. So the fact that the paving occurred after November 15th in and of itself really doesn't mean anything.
No, it's more of what was the temperature on November 20th?
Sure, it was not above 50, it was mid-40s.
But again, you know, Mr. Hamlin was there, and, you know, was
And
there.
he's recommending holding back 25%.
But because of the misting and not because of the temperature, what I'm suggesting is the misting would have no impact on the application.
So what is Fred suggesting for a time frame for holding back? Till when? Spring, summer? He's saying hold back for how long? I don't see any time frame.
Yeah, it doesn't give a time frame, but I think it's reasonable to say that the money should be held back while the common driveway is completed. I mean, there's still plantings that need to be done, the loaming needs to be corrected, they need to still grade some of the 4-bay areas, so I think, and then the structural fill question needs to be ironed out.
Just trying to clarify, was this the top coat or the binder?
The
coat?
top
coat.
It was the top coat.
So none of that remaining work, you know, notwithstanding, none of that remaining work has any impact on the top coat of the paving. You know, the installation of the blueberry bushes are, you know, the installation of the blueberry bushes, the structural fill, we know, I mean, from our perspective, I know the board needs to see this, but we know that wall is an engineered wall. It doesn't require structural fill, and
So I think
we'll
we
be
just need
providing
to-
that certification.
We need the letter.
Yeah.
So, I don't think that that's necessarily related to the holdback of the top coat of $3,200.
We have comments from the crowd, audience.
Hi, Melissa Slen. We're at 151 Long Hill Road. So we're residents who will be responsible for the road once it's released. We have some concerns, serious concerns about the road in relationship to the timing of when the road was installed and making it through the winter without issues. We had issues with that road before on the base coat that were not repaired, even though we were asking several times for it to be repaired. People have had issues with their cars driving down it, lots of challenges.
The actual bridge itself sunk significantly in the middle.
Where that wall is, that's being
Despite
referenced.
repeated requests of the builder to fix it.
What's your name?
Kevin Salon,
So,
151 Long Hill Road. Despite repeated requests, the reply would be, I'll do it next week, I'll do it next week. We went through a whole year of nothing being fixed, nothing being maintained on that road.
So we are concerned about, and there were also some issues even when it was originally installed where they, builder had to go back and fix things once was inspected by Fred because it wasn't done properly. So we're concerned about the condition of that road once it makes it through the winter, and the fact that we are holding the bag on that road and have to live with that road as residents going forward. And we have had a lot of issues with our house, and we still have an open punch list. We have major items that still have not been completed. We're almost a year and a half in our house. So our confidence in this work getting done and getting done properly is very low, just given our historical experience. And as I said, this is going to be very expensive for us to be maintaining. Already there was a bobcat that went over the road, and there's all these marks all over the place. The neighbor at the end of the road still doesn't have a driveway, so there's going to be paving trucks going back down it again. There have been lots of heavy equipment already going up and down it, the day after it was put in. So there's also areas where we have mud and plantings haven't been done for seeding and loaming. There's loam that was put on top of seed and hay, just thrown there. The plantings were put in, yes, but whether or not they'll actually take, I don't know, just given how this whole entire project was done and the delays and all of the challenges that we had. So we're very concerned. We're actually asking to have more money held because we want to make sure that that work gets done and gets done properly, and that the incentive is there to ensure that we are left with a sound road to maintain for the life of the road and our time living at that residence. So we're asking the board to reconsider the amount at a higher level in order to ensure that that is fixed.
And it's not just our house where things from the punch list and issues that came up over the first year were completely ignored and not fixed. It's most of the houses in that complex having issues with the builder.
How many houses are on
I would
that?
have to agree. I'm Susan Sharma, 149 Long Hill. And I support that statement.
So, sorry, I'm sorry, what was
Is it
your name?
149?
Susan Sharma,
Yeah.
149 Long Hill. And our driveway was just put in the same time as a common driveway. We waited over a year for our driveway to be put in.
I was also present when the top coat went down.
Same.
It was missing the start, but then it was actually
It did rain.
raining.
And it was not above 50 degrees. I was there the whole day.
I would just say that this board has a peer review engineer for a reason, and Mr. Hanway noted the weather conditions as missing. I would also say that, not to get into anything specifically that may have been said here, but, items on punch lists or lots have no bearing on this bond whatsoever. So, again, I don't want to get into a back and forth or, any type of confrontation having to do with that, because I think it's apropos of nothing that is before this board tonight.
There's no bearing, but it definitely shows his track record.
I'm Lauren Silly, I live at 147 Long Hill Road. I would just say another thing is, as was mentioned, is one of the houses still doesn't have their landscaping done, their driveway put in. And to say that, you know, who knows when that's gonna happen, but then to say that they're not even gonna clean the driveway after that, I don't, you know, they're gonna be having equipment and they've left trash and debris throughout this area since we've lived there for over a year. So to say that they're arguing this 250, even though it's a small amount, that they're not gonna clean that after, you know, there's all this other work being done, that doesn't really make sense to me either.
What are requirements with regard to installation of a common driveway with erosion sediment control and sediment, you know?
Well, in this particular project, it's not the jurisdiction of the planning board, but there are significant wetlands on the property. There is a wetland crossing, so erosion controls, yeah, there were definitely erosion controls that needed to be maintained on that property.
Okay. Is there I'm assuming there's an order of conditions?
Yes.
For the project?
So, I mean, I'm hearing from the residents, it's a lot of loam and seed issues and stuff, but, you know, looking at Fred, so on 10, do you ever know what does he say?
So basically.
4x2, so 10 is loam, right? Loam and seed, shoulders. It says 4x2 must be loamed and seeded. That's 4x2. Is that driveway 2?
What's that? Sorry, 4v2.
Note 10.
42 must be
Stormwater.
Well, it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, the 4, you're okay with the majority of Fred's numbers, but you're, except for number 3, 14, 17, and 20?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So I think he
Yes,
doesn't have a,
yeah.
so number 10, we've got $390
For reseeding. Yeah.
yeah, in there, so that's, he's agreeing with that.
Okay.
So the question is do we keep number 3, 14, 17, and 20 amounts the same? Do we raise them, do we lower them?
I definitely don't think we should probably go with Fred on the holding back the 25% on the road, you know.
I think so. He was the one that was there during the installation of it.
I would definitely.
He put the comment down there for a reason.
Could we establish a parameter for
How
the
long?
release? Yeah.
I'd say at least make it through the winter, no?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's gotta be.
I mean, I would say through the winter. I don't know when does Walter anticipate submitting the as-built plan?
For the roadway?
Mhm.
I don't know.
Because typically that's one of the last steps is that he submits an as-built plan of the work that's been done.
Right.
Fred reviews it,
Yeah.
approves it, then the board basically says, okay, this project is completed.
I mean, basically between now and March 15th, that's usually a winter season for pavement. Nothing's gonna happen. So, you wouldn't even look at this until after March 15th.
Is there another comment though?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that, I think Fred's report was on December 5th. It was written, which is the day it was paved. I don't know if he was able to get back to the site after that.
That was November 20th that was paved.
No, that's from December. Oh,
No,
November
December,
20th.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
December
Sorry.
5th it was
Sorry.
paved, right. I don't know if he was able to get back to the site after that, but 2 days later, the Bobcat that they have went down the driveway and zigzagged back and forth all the way down, putting loam down on each side of the road. And if you look at it now, it's completely scarred up all the way down the road. So I don't know what implications are in terms of it breaking up over the winter or not.
And if I recall, at the last meeting when Walter had requested an extension for paving beyond November 15th, part of that negotiation was that the majority or all of the site work would be completed so that the heavy equipment wouldn't be driving over the top coat. I believe that was part of that,
Yeah, I think that's right, though I wouldn't necessarily qualify a Bobcat as heavy equipment. It's a pretty small machine.
maybe not the
Jesus.
Bobcat, but I do have concerns with maybe what is left to be done in terms of like paving that last driveway. Yeah, I don't know what type of equipment others going to be driving over there moving forward.
There's a lot of heavy equipment left.
There's an excavator still down on one of the lots.
There's a
And a
digger,
digger.
there's a massive mound to fill,
They're still working on the last house.
it's a long machine.
Okay. So, I think I'm okay with the reduction on the plants that we talked about, but I'm thinking with the concerns, and Fred hasn't been out there since the 5th, that I'm not even comfortable going just the 25%. I don't know, Erica, if you think that's enough, or we should not reduce it completely that amount, or what do you think?
That's not my call. I mean, Fred Hamway is our peer review engineer, so
Yeah.
I would tend to, if that's his recommendation, I would go with his recommendation.
But, just people are saying that it's been damaged since then. I don't know.
You know,
We can
again,
hold it, I don't know if the board wants to wait until Fred gets back from vacation and does another site inspection. We hold off on the bond request until then. Fred can do another inspection report.
Well, I think we can do some of them, but,
listen, to me, anecdotal comments, that run counter to even the recommendation, and I'm here saying that I think 3,200 is excessive. Fred Hamway thinks that 3,200 is appropriate. I don't see, just based on some comments here tonight, why there would be justification to increase the bond or not act on this request tonight.
I think we can act on it. It's just, So for the backfill, we're waiting for a letter. So we can do that one contingent on the letter.
We can certainly do that. That's pretty straightforward.
For the trees and bushes, it sounds like we said
Right.
1330.
Well, we did, but I'm listening to some of the abutters and reading some of the comments with regard to the plantings and stuff, and I'm wondering if that was,
Yeah, I was reading his note on the plantings too there. It seemed, Fred was saying it looked like less was done, so.
We've got a letter from the installer indicating that everything but the blueberry bushes had been planted on November 20th.
and then, but there's also grass seed and stuff? Is that correct? Or-
The seeding's a different line item.
Okay,
Sorry.
sorry.
It's kind of-
Okay, all right. Loam and shoulders, all right, so there is some still left to be able to seed in the spring, because most likely I would think we'd need to do that. What is the, if the road is damaged by construction vehicles and stuff, what is the, I guess, ability to make sure it gets fixed?
By holding back the bond.
That's basically it.
That's
Okay.
really the best leverage.
Okay.
So these plantings that they just planted in November, are, you said guaranteed for a year, or they're warranted for a year? That they make it through the winter? They don't make it through the winter?
Do you know if the nursery has a year of warranty?
I can't tell you that for a fact, but I think that that's, typically standard if they die as a result of.
Yeah, within the year.
Yeah.
So if they were planted on November 20th, if they die next spring or even next fall, they should be warranted so that they can be replaced.
Can I ask a question? if they die in the spring, how would we then, they're out of this, how do we go about getting that?
Well, again, so we have the
replanted?
bond, and we're just wondering how much we should hold back for that.
Right, so given that they planted it so late in the season, it was sitting out, that's why we think this is definitely
I'm
reasonable.
not like a
because-
plant person, so it just
Right.
sounds like a bad time to plant.
It was pretty
Exactly.
warm in November, and I'll say that, you know, I'm general
Roots
counsel
have
for,
to-
I know, but I'm
It
general counsel
snowed.
for a construction company, and we plant in November routinely. This is not something that's out of the norm at all.
I mean, I work with landscape architects, we still plant in November, but there's still a loss of plants in the springtime.
Mhm.
It's just part of it.
What's November 27th?
Doesn't necessarily mean, I mean, it all depends on the winter and weather and how it goes through, and if we have a mild winter, it could be very well, but, you know, there may not be, but,
So,
Can I just make a quick comment? They were planted on November 27th and 28th. They had sat at least a week or two prior before being planted, and then we just recently had the snow, so there's no way that anything probably took within a week or two.
this is saying November 20th.
It's, that's
That's when
correct.
they were delivered, I believe. They sat there
sat for a couple
for a
weeks.
week or so on the side of the road. They were delivered on that date.
It says
And
on
they
the
weren't
week of
able to
November
plant.
20th, we planted 14 trees and 7
Oh, in
shrubs.
a week, so with it, okay.
we go.
November 27th and 28th, I believe.
So, I mean, Fred was saying hold 50% back, but he wasn't aware of these plantings. Maybe, you know, instead of, maybe we should do 25%, I don't know what number.
You could always do the 5% contingent upon ensuring that the plantings do have a warranty, and he could go back and
Yeah,
get that
if we can-
response for us.
I mean, I think you'd be able to get the information from the nursery pretty easily, knowing that they have a year warranty.
And if there is no warranty, then I would,
Just
then the
leave.
board could suggest bumping that up.
If there's, just go 25, but just do the 50% he suggested.
It's up to the board, yeah, I mean, you could do either.
Because it does sound like work was done that Fred wasn't aware of, so maybe we do 5%, but if there's no warranty, then 25%. Civil engineer.
If there's no warranty, which I would be kind of shocked, then I would hope a much higher percentage back, but I'd be shocked if the nursery doesn't have a warranty. I really haven't heard of a nursery that doesn't have a year warranty.
But how would we actually get, because if they're out of the picture, how would we then,
Well, they wouldn't be out of the picture because we're holding a bond, they wouldn't get their money.
for until the spring or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not for a full
Right, it's
year,
5
we're not
years.
holding it until,
No, just until the spring when, we were saying when what is it again?
The
final-
as-bills.
The as-bills, yeah.
So that's actually a good point. So if they die in next September, they're still under warranty, how does it get replaced?
Well, if the warranty's in place, you assume that the nursery.
Someone
would
still
do
has
it.
to install, someone
Yeah,
still
who
has to.
installs it?
It has to, I mean, the tree itself is.
Well, what I would suggest at some point, you know, if a plant dies, whether it's a year from now or 18 months from now, that could be for any number of reasons, and it's likely not the install. So, you know, I think if a plant dies next September, it's not because of the install. And at that point, I mean, at a certain point, this board needs to release this bond.
Yes, I will say, I mean, typically, plants are warranted though for a year because it can take some time for them to acclimate. I don't think it's unreasonable to think within a year, if the plant dies, that, and if it's under warranty, it should be replaced.
So the way you came about the 875, that's just the cost for the plant, right? It's not.
That's the cost for the bushes.
But not for
But not
install.
installs?
Yeah, I guess no, but they're low bushes, I mean, it's a low install if you put the board
So what
on.
would they cost each?
I don't know.
Each
75
$75.
by 35, I think that was estimated by Fred at
I
one
think
point.
typically don't you just double the cost?
Yeah, yes.
It's $25 a year.
$25 each.
So that's $17.50 basically for install. No, I mean total.
Total.
Yeah, I'm leaning more towards that. I don't know, I think increasing it more.
What's 25% of 12,000? So 3,100. Maybe we should just go to 25%
The 12,000 or 25% of the
of
26,000?
the 12,000. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Of the
it'd be 26.
Of the 26, so then that'd be 6.
Is it
So it'd be
possible?
650.
Is it possible to wait, maybe? Does it make more sense to wait until Fred is here to understand some of the context of some of these? The rationale behind some of these things? I'm just wondering, just listening, if it makes more sense to wait, since there's so much deliberation about some of
I
these
think
things.
we have an appropriate request before this board. I think Fred Hamway's provided enough information for this board to make a determination on these items.
Well, so if we didn't act at all, right now the bond is, right now it's what, 77?
No, that's without the markup. So with the market, what's being held with the tri-party agreement is like 106,000. So a copy of that tri-party agreement is in your packet.
Because you're saying you agree with Fred, but then you're
No,
arguing the cost, so.
Well, just because some of Fred's information's, he hasn't been there since the plants were put in, right?
No, that's not true, because his report came from December 5th.
So he was.
Oh, but what he said is that just needs,
He needs
He
the
needs a
letter,
letter,
which
yeah.
they
Yeah.
provided the letter, so.
yeah.
I mean, I think the only thing that I'd be willing to come down on are the trees and bushes. You can reduce that number, everything else I think stays as is.
Well, so we're waiting for the letter from the wall.
Yeah, subject
Yeah,
to.
so,
We don't have that, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so until we have that,
And so instead, we were saying 1330, maybe we should be saying,
6,600?
huh?
That's your
Oh,
25%.
25, if you want to do, I mean, is 25% the right number, or do we just do the blueberry bushes?
I do not think we just do the blueberry bushes.
So Fred was saying, so maybe we say, because we do have the letter now,
Yeah.
so let's just hold back 25% there.
Yeah, I think it's one of those, given the concerns that the abutters have, I mean, I would be willing to bring Fred's number down some with recommending what you're saying, but I don't think the original amount of 5% was necessarily appropriate.
Yeah,
I guess my concern is that, again, knowing that these have been installed, the letter now being in the record, it's difficult to suggest just on speculation that these trees could die next September, that we should raise that amount beyond a typical retainage amount.
I mean, when do you think that you're gonna be doing the as-built?
I can find out, but I don't know that off the top of my head.
Well, then I'd be willing to go down to 5% with the thing from the nursery that they have a warranty on it.
What's 5% of 26?
13.
That was 13.
That was the 13.
Yeah, but even the blueberry bushes with install is more than that, so.
Oh, that's 7. They make it even 2,000.
Wait, the blueberry bushes are the 875.
Yeah, but that's uninstalled, so just double it for install. And then run, yeah, so do 2,000. So we got the 3,200, keep that for for the top coat, keep the 3,200 to 25%, keep everything, number,
Well, the 1,500 can be
yep,
removed once the
Contingent on the
letter,
letter,
yeah,
yeah.
once the letter's received.
and then 2,000, so what's the, so where are we with math then?
Excuse
All
me,
right,
can
so we
we
just-
oops.
Oh.
Running up the numbers.
So based on your summary there, Eric, the remaining items to be bonded according to Fred Hamway was $21,750.
Yeah.
However, the board is looking at reducing the bond being held for the trees and shrubs from $12,425 down to $2,000. So that would be, that would reduce the overall bond amount to $11,325. Then times our 1.5 markup, so the new bond amount would be $16,987.50.
What was
So-
it, 16,000 what, 900?
And $87.50.
And then reducing the trees and bushes would be contingent on.
Receiving a letter, a warranty.
But
And
then,
then the wall would also be
Contingent.
Yeah.
contingent.
but it's hard to bring this up again, but like, again, if the warranty comes through, but these die in September, and we don't know for sure why, but how are we gonna get this replaced if we only have $2,000 held, but it costs more than that to get these other plants replanted?
I mean, if they die within a year, and they're under warranty, is that something that can be replaced?
Through the nursery.
Yeah. Well, the nursery's not gonna stop. They're gonna just give you the tree.
The nursery did install these, right?
Oh, sorry,
Yes.
did I?
They say install.
Can I ask a question? What, the 1.5 markup? Fred was requesting it, I think, a 21,750 total be withheld, remaining.
Prior to the 1.5.
Does that seem?
He never includes the 1.5 in his bond estimates.
Okay.
Or his
Yeah,
bond
because you have
reviews.
10, because so his number here is 77, but what you really have bonded is 106.
So just for example, you have a total here of, the original total of like 77,000, that didn't include at the time the 1.5. So once you do the 1.5, that was what was actually in that tri-party agreement.
That gives you the 106, 455?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And Kevin, I actually have a question for you, because I was rereading that tri-party agreement, and I do have some concerns, because that agreement says that the construction to be performed under this agreement shall be completed by November 30th, and obviously that date has passed. So is there going to be a new agreement for the board to sign?
We could get an updated letter from Lowell 5, but this work is where it's now completed. I don't have any concern whatsoever, with it, but if we need an updated letter from Lowell 5, I bet you we could do that in pretty short order.
I would recommend having a new agreement put in place.
We ask the board to perhaps reconsider item 3, hold of 25%, given the heavy equipment that has already traveled upon the road is still at the end of our road,
What, hold on to 25%?
to increase that
You mentioned
amount.
earlier, you were thinking maybe raising it to 50.
$3,200, if there's major damage to the road, is not a lot of money
So
to
you're saying,
cover a
you're
long
saying
road.
that's happened since he was out there the 5th?
Yes.
Well, the Bobcat going back and forth, scoring up the road.
How's
and
that for Fred
afterwards.
Hammond was out there?
And there's still major work to be done on a house down there.
Yeah,
so
it's like
On
there,
the what?
the
On-
last house is still,
Still
There's
needs
still
to
The
be
house is at the
paved.
end of the driveway?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
it
you
still has
equipment.
major work.
The equipment's on that lot right now. Has
It's
to
the end,
get
it's the
out.
last, we just approved that. That's what they paid, just the last part
It's
of
not
it.
on this plan, it's further.
It might be on
It's-
the flip side of that.
It's the end of the driveway, right?
yes, almost, before you go up the hill. So-
It's not the one on the way back, but it's
Yeah, the driveway
the
itself.
one beyond the
Oh, yeah, it's
stormwater
end of the
measure.
driveway. Yeah, end of the road.
Yes.
That-
This one.
Yeah.
Lot 4.
This one?
This
So this one, the
this one they're
driveway.
still working
Yeah.
on, yeah, this driveway hasn't been paved.
Yeah, there's no base bottom coat, the yard is, there's tons of mounds of dirt, excavator.
Again, it's an active construction site. I mean, we've been going back and forth here for, quite a bit. We're getting total comments from the residents down there. And I can appreciate the fact that, they have their side of a particular story, and I'm sure if Mr. Erickson were here, he'd have another position. But, none of that has any bearing whatsoever on where we are right now tonight and, Mr. Hamway's recommendations. And again, I thought that recommendation was unnecessarily high as to item number 3, and I respect the board's position on adhering to it, but I certainly don't see any justification whatsoever for increasing it above his recommendation.
Well, I mean, First of all, these people are here with concerns, so just try to be a little bit more respectful, I think.
No, listen, I think that,
But,
I've been plenty respectful.
yeah. Well, I mean, so, I mean, they're suggesting things have been done since he went up there. I don't know, what do you think of this? Do you think we should hold it or raise it a little bit because there's concerns, or what do you?
I guess, you know, I understand that Fred was out there and he was inspecting it, but I do know that the temperatures were below than what it should have been, so I definitely have some concerns about it. But, again, there's no testing requirement for it. I don't know. I'm leaning towards just what Fred recommends, but,
I think the fact that the board had requested that heavy equipment not be driven over the driveway once it was top coated, and the fact that it sounds like they may have been doing that, and there may be damage because of that.
No, all that's been said this evening has to do with a
Yeah,
bulk,
but, I mean,
which is lighter than a truck driving down that roadway.
and this, what, you know, what's left to be on the driveway, is there more heavy equipment to be done back there, or no?
If there is, they'd be trailered off, so they wouldn't be brought down with the treads over the finished coat of the pavement, which is, again, that's typical. There is active construction out there, and then the lot owner at the very end have been bringing some fill down, and that's why his driveway's not completed as of yet, but once that's paved, and that would just be, I assume, a bitumen team that would come down and pave, and then, as far as any machines that are left on there, they would be trailered off as they would down any roadway or subdivision road where there was construction ongoing. This is not an atypical situation.
Erica, any suggestion on increasing it or
Well,
not?
I actually kind of didn't finish what I
Okay.
was trying to get at. So are you contradicting what they're saying? Has there been no damage to the pavement that just was recently done?
I've not seen
Because-
any damage down on the pavement down
Because
there.
I think it's perfectly fair, given the fact that the board gave you leniency to even do the paving, to wait on that one line item for Fred to come back and do one more inspection.
To not reduce it at all?
Just that one line item, yeah, just to wait on that one.
So just leave it at the 12,000?
Yeah, I would just, yeah, exactly. I would just hold what's there and then come back to the next meeting and.
Yeah, I'd
we
be
can
most
iron that
comfortable
out.
with that, instead of picking some number in between. Just don't even touch that, have Fred go out and review it again. And he, also, I think, he'll have more information on planting and stuff, or warranties. Well, I guess he saw the plans, but he just needed the letter.
well, yeah, we have the letter from the nursery noting what was installed.
So I think,
That was his.
so I think we should, just leave line 3 as it is, don't reduce it at all.
Wait until we have more
Right.
feedback from Fred.
When is Fred returning?
Well, our next meeting is the 10th.
Our next meeting is on January.
So another month? Against the engineer's recommendation because of anecdotal comments from residents?
Well, but there's been new information since he was there. And there's gonna be a big reduction here,
No, there's not. Now there'll be an increase of the amount that he's suggesting be withheld.
Right, but right now we're withholding, what, 106, right?
Right, that's the full bond amount.
But you're not reducing anything beyond what should equitably be reduced. I mean, everything that's here that you're reducing this evening, should be released.
We have in the bank 106, right?
Right, with,
And tonight's meeting was to say, should we go down to 32?
right.
So we're gonna be releasing a huge amount, it's just, we're trying to get the rate.
Again, I agree with that, from a dollar to dollar standpoint, but all of this work is done. So it's appropriate to release that.
I feel like we need another review for that, so let's take that 3,200, leave the 12,750. Can we do the numbers? Everything we had, leave the 12,750 for line 3. We'll have Fred go back out and then clean up everything else here. So let's leave that 12,750. The 1,500 for line 13 contingent on the letter. The 2,000 for line 20 contingent on the warranty. And then on our next meeting's the 10th. have Fred review it before then. You still don't have a big reduction here. Let's just clear it up with Fred.
We see it differently.
It's tough without having him here. We're kind of blind, so
He
the only thing we can do is go on
He
that.
submitted a letter.
I know, but we're hearing of some things that have come up after he's.
All that I've heard as it pertains to the concrete, to the bitumen, was that a bobcat may have driven down. It's not heavy machinery. Under no circumstances would that be considered heavy machinery. It's certainly not contrary to anything that this board required in the extension. Fred observed the bitumen going down. It was misting on the time. It was a few degrees below the 50, but certainly not below what would be acceptable. And it's a $8,000 additional withholding from what Fred had recommended to this board.
I agree, I understand what you're saying, but I think that there's been some comments made that have already stated that the pavement may have some deterioration for it, so we would like to have Fred.
If between now and then, one of the residents comes down with a plow truck and chips up the bitumen, and Fred sees it, what's gonna happen then? I mean, are we always going to hold the developer responsible for anything that happens?
No, I think there's reasonableness there, but I think it's reasonable for us to ask for Fred to just go up doing one more final inspection of it.
So what's the number?
So the bond without the markup is $20,875. And then times the 1.5, it's $31,312.50.
What was that, 31?
$31,312.50. So basically, I just to confirm the numbers,
Yeah.
the 12,750 for the top course. I subtracted out the 3,200 and then added that number back into that total to get that number.
Yep. All right. So we'll be releasing, do we have to say in the motion?
Yeah, we should
how much-
probably
Yeah.
state how much we're actually releasing. So that would be $75,142.50.
So what was that?
$75,142.50.
All right, somebody want to make a stab at the motion?
Make motion to release $75,142.50 contingent upon a letter from the engineer regarding item 14.
13. 14, you're right, sorry.
And a letter from the nursery regarding the warranty on the plants installed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can I just, sorry, ask one question? If we get the letter from the engineer about the wall, then
We should have a second
we
motion.
should, yeah, because that would increase your amount you get back by 1,500.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because the 75,142 is not assuming you don't have the
So we
letter.
should do it minus 1,500.
And you gotta multiply by 1.
Yeah, so,
Well, I know, I'm saying.
I think,
So 2250. So the number should have been different.
yeah, it should have been 19,375.
Yeah. What is it, it's 29 months?
I had 29,062 and 50 cents.
62, yeah.
So this,
Yeah, let's try it again.
let's see, that should be 77,000.
So 77, 392.50.
Yeah.
What's the number?
77,392.50.
To be released.
Yeah, because then that brings the 1,500 down to 0.
Want to just redo it?
So we'll strike that motion.
Yeah.
Yes. Strike that motion.
Same thing, just different number.
Well, now how about the bushes? Are we,
Well,
we're withholding that money?
well,
Well, no, we've already said, we're
2,000.
only holding 2,000.
Yeah.
Only holding
Contingent-
2,000.
contingent.
So we still need the letter
Mhm.
from the engineer on the survey of the wall, and we still need the letter on the warranty from the nursery. But the number should be 77,392.50.
Okay. Make a motion to release $77,392.50 from the bond for 147 Long Hill Road, common driveway plan, contingent upon receiving a letter from the engineer for the wall described in item 14, and a letter from the nursery regarding the warranty of the plants.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Good night.
All right. That was fun. I thought you went home.
Switch sides.
So I don't have to open this hearing?
This is the continue.
Nope, I just need the board to sign the plan extension. As agreed upon with the applicant.
So we have to make a motion to approve this?
Oh,
Yep.
I don't touch that, right? That's,
Right, you're in the process.
So we don't make a motion, then we do.
Oh, okay, yes.
Okay, and we continue here on Padmore subdivision, parcel 6.E3. Continues until January 10th at
9:30 PM.
9:30.
it's gonna be a long night.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Abstain. How are we already at 9:30?
Because we have the hearing for the common driveway, we have the hearing for Hudson Street, we have the hearing for Rebecca on that, and then we have.
Bring some caffeine on the 10th.
We've got
No, no, no.
Is there,
I know,
like,
this is like.
I know, because it's tight in my office, and my office is freezing, so, yeah, I'll
it's,
bring it up to you.
like, that side of the building isn't bad, it's just over
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
There's no heat.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing.
I'm shivering.
I am.
I figured after that it would be warmed up a bit here, but yeah.
All right, bylaws. I need to go get a drink of water, I think. This cup's in that, at that fountain, right? Or not?
I think there may not be any more. Upstairs there
I'll
are.
make it.
Upstairs there are.
So actually, we're not too far off of the schedule. Imagine if we had 10 more too.
Oh.
So you, Bill?
Sean. I'm just here to kind of,
Oh, okay.
I talked with you earlier.
Okay, great.
Oh, is this what, your potential candidate?
Yeah, so I wanted to kind of come and see the whole
Excellent.
process.
See what you're getting yourself into.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's.
You're still here.
Great.
Well, my wife's at home with the baby, so maybe, I told her I didn't know what time that.
Yeah. All right. So let's see. All right, bylaws, I need to switch my brain.
Did we change anything with the cottage?
No, but actually, I did have a couple, I read through it again. I should stop doing that.
Yeah, what are you doing?
Well, better do it now than it
That's
comes
true.
in for, so.
So I just had a couple of questions. On the guest parking, we don't give, page 5. Can you find it on the bylaw?
Oh my God, I'm shaking.
I am, me too, I am shaking.
I am too.
It's just like my body temperature's dropped.
You're producing more heat. You should be more like, God.
Yeah, my teeth are chattering. All
Okay,
right, so page 5,
Okay.
on the minimum, on the guest parking, we don't give a guest parking, where is that? Page 5, E5. Oh, it's not the same page. It's page 4 now, sorry. I don't know why I had page 5. So we talk about minimum parking, 2 spots per unit, or 1 if it's a single. Then we say additional parking in proximity to any clubhouse shall be provided, that no single accessory parking area should contain more than 6. We don't give a minimum, do we want to give a minimum number? Do you know what I mean, like a minimum 1 guest spot per so many dwellings? Or do we not want to do that? Do you know what I'm saying?
It's not
Like, so,
totally necessary.
the way it
I mean,
is,
Certainly.
the way it is, you know, you can get away with no guest spots, but I don't think we want that. Although it says, shall be provided. I mean, I think we want some, don't we?
Did our schedule of parking cover this?
No.
Not guess, no. I don't think so.
I was just wondering if we should put a minimum, so it isn't, I assume that they would do it.
I wouldn't say, but then what's that minimum amount? I mean, because you don't need 1 per,
Yeah.
You don't need 1 per unit, but
Well,
Yeah.
one per
One
2
per,
units.
or 1 per 4.
1 per 3. I mean, having a
Yeah.
cottage where we have insufficient guest parking, certain times of the year, it's really,
yeah.
really brutal. You can, people are parking all over the place and create.
That was my
noise
thought.
and, I mean,
Just to put,
one per 2 may not be sufficient, but it would cover, I think, most cases.
That's still quite a lot.
I was
That's
thinking one,
interesting.
I was thinking 1 per 4.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I would think like 3 or 4. I mean, because
Yeah,
1 per
yeah.
2 is still, that's a fair amount of added extra spaces.
Yeah.
Do we need to call it out? I mean, won't they just put whatever they feel is the
Well,
right number?
yeah,
Well,
so then the
they'll-
question
They'll
is,
put some minimal amount
They're-
to meet,
we're leaving
you
it
know.
up to them.
yeah, and I mean, it's not, it costs some money to put them in. So the fewer they can get away with.
I was just wondering if we wanted to put a lower bound. A minimum.
It's not a bad idea.
But you can just put it high, 1 per 5, I don't know.
I mean, 1 per 3, 1 per 4, I think is starting, I mean, you start to think about something like Mother's Day or
Yeah.
something like that,
Or Christmas or
Or Christmas or
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
yeah.
I'm just thinking like Ridgefield has typically 4 units per building, and there really is like, and in between each building, there's 2 or 3, in between every 2 or 3 buildings, there's like 2 or 3 spots. So it's like 1 per building,
Yeah, I
so
mean, I think
1
1
per
per
4.
3.
One per 3?
Yeah,
Yeah.
either 3 or 4 I'd be
I'd say
okay.
4.
I'd say, I was gonna say 3, just I think that's,
You can be
I mean, 1 per 4 seems reasonable. I don't know.
We're split.
I don't know that we need to.
Let's
give
just
them-
say 4. It's just a minimum number.
It is a minimum number, so that's fine to go a little higher. That's
Yeah.
fine. Minimum 1 per 4.
Okay, so
Yeah.
guest parking shall be provided requiring 1 space per
For
4
4
dwelling
dwellings,
units?
yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
Another note I had was, so it's just, I just want to know if this is how it prosperous. They say, open space can be owned by the owners or deeded conservation restriction. That's how it is in Foxborough too.
Which number is that again? Or is it
Open
space?
space.
Ownership of open space?
Yeah, ownership of open space. So you say, 5.
Oh, right above it.
So you say, and to be owned or controlled by the owners or can be offered to the town. Is that how Foxborough is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right, that's
All right,
fine.
yes, it really matches that.
take note. I'm trying to understand my note, shoot. I'm too cold to.
Your brain's freezing.
It is. Take out. Oh, okay, design criteria. Where's design criteria? Design criteria.
Page 5. Right in the
Oh, yeah, okay. Yep. Oh, take out C. So we talked about this, I thought. So as not to have any dwelling unit extend under or over another dwelling unit in the same building. And I know that Michelle Tuck was wondering what the point of that was. And I think the point is to not have garden style units. But I think you brought up, is there, if the landscape's hilly and there's something, like.
And do we necessarily, want to prevent garden style? Keeping in mind that, especially for elderly housing, everything's on one level then. And that gives you, a little bit more flexibility.
I just think we should
design,
take,
so.
my thought was just take that C note out. So as to not have any dwelling unit extend under or over.
Well, isn't the intent though to have all of these units? I mean, they're up and down, like you have, one, you know what I mean? You're not gonna have, just by taking that out, now allow you to have units above it and below it type thing.
Yeah.
Apartment style.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which
garden style,
I think
which-
that's it.
I mean, maybe we just say, I don't know. It just seemed like a
What was,
weird
what
clause.
was Michelle recommending?
Well, she just said this is a peculiar requirement that I have not seen before.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's worded strangely. I mean, did we want to say no
Garden style.
well, I mean, you have to define that. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Two-story separate dwellings on top of each other?
I mean, it'd be good to talk to a developer to ask him, does that inhibit them a lot?
That was my only question. No. I mean, what was your thought when you put that in there?
To be honest with you, I think it was a carryover from it was either Sudbury or, I think it might have been Sudbury's bylaw.
I mean, I think the intent is that you've got your units,
Right.
so you don't have someone living above you.
Right.
Or below you,
Yeah.
like that type of thing.
So what if we say,
Although,
so,
if you're looking at elderly, you want more single-floor units.
Well, if you're looking at elderly, yeah, they're not gonna be.
Well, I mean,
yeah.
these are over 55, so,
yeah.
you're starting to get
So would we
into
even have-
mobility issues, so, if you want,
One side of the
Yeah.
hill you're going this way, one side of the hill you're going that way.
well, I mean,
I don't know. I mean, can we say that so as not to have any dwelling unit
I don't know if
fully?
it's really applicable to.
Can we say
yeah.
so as to not have any dwelling unit, instead of extend fully under or over another dwelling unit or something? I don't know.
I mean, what is the vision that the board would like to see with these developments? We are calling it a cottage overlay. Are we looking to have cottages built?
Well, that's why I was saying take it out. I think
you'd want to keep it in if you
I
want
think
to
you
see
wanna keep it
cottages.
in.
I mean, unless
Yeah.
you want to see like your typical condo style
well,
buildings.
we're
with
already
new-
seeing 6 or 8 unit cottages, so, it's,
Is there an example of something like that where there would be multiple units on top of each other?
Well, I know just in Lunenburg, and we have a condo development, and it's like 3 level, and they're all right on top of each other.
But are they separate, like distinct buildings where there's only, what's the limit we have per dwelling or whatever?
Oh, isn't
I
it
think
like
we
6
all-
or 8?
Like 6 or, yeah.
No,
Yeah,
no.
So,
Is it 6?
yeah.
Yeah.
and, well, I mean, the real question is, could you get something like that past the design review board?
Well,
Or if you did, it would have to look you know.
I mean, in theory, I don't have a problem with garden style or whatever.
Right,
you call them. I mean, if it looks good, then,
Right,
Yeah.
then who cares?
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. I'm fine taking it out. And it has,
And then let's put some of the, what do we have, what did we put in the ADA compliant units on the first floor, and then, you know, some, you know, other ones above, sort of, you know.
It's still, it's like two separate dwellings, I mean, it still goes to the count.
we capped the minimum height.
We kept, yeah,
We
we
got the
had,
maximum height,
it's
right?
like 32 feet. I
Well,
think.
that falls into the normal,
Yeah.
yeah.
Either way, it doesn't matter.
I don't know.
I'm not
I'd say
strong-
take it out,
I'm not
but,
strong
you know,
either,
as I think, again, if we want it used, you know, if we want this used, then,
Yeah,
and if they can make it
more
look
flexible
reasonable
and
and
stuff.
more
Right, yeah.
flexible and stuff, then why, you know, why?
Yeah, why
That's
put another
fine.
restriction on it?
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, take it
All
out.
right, take it out.
The only other thing I just, on the.
She made a face when we said that, but.
I didn't mean to. I just, no, I just,
She's freezing up, that's what it is.
that, yeah. When we initially started talking about the cottage overlay, I mean, we were looking at the development in West Concord, the Riverwalk, I think it was
Riverwalk.
called.
Yeah.
And it was more cottage style where they were
Right.
one level and kind of clustered together. So that was sort of what I was envisioning for cottage, but it doesn't, it's just
Well, I mean,
one
I
idea.
think, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we've kind of gone from, you know, we started from kind of over 55 cottage to,
Townhouse.
yeah, we kind of morphed
Yeah.
around a bit here.
Bottom line is, I think we want to provide as much flexibility
Yeah.
to the developer as possible,
Yeah, right.
and then through our permit process, we'll work with them to make sure it's
To
aesthetically
me, when I read-
pleasing
Right,
and.
yeah.
When I did a final read through, it just seemed to me like something that we would get hung up on.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only other thing I'd like, this is page 3, dwelling units may be attached, yada, yada, shall not exceed 2,400 square feet of living space
It should be gross, right?
or livable space.
Not
If-
not
if-
counting
if-
garage.
If you have,
Yeah, no, well,
Yeah.
it doesn't usually include
Yeah, wouldn't-
basements,
yeah.
attics, or garage.
right, but if you have a walkout basement, then somebody, you could go out and finish that and you've got another 1,200 square feet.
So
Yes.
livable.
So either livable means that if you know, you'd have to control the height of the basement to be under the building
Yeah.
standards, or you'd have to count that as part of your space. Same thing
Yeah,
with
'cause
if they want
townhouses-
to leave a, you know, if they had a, you know, a huge attic that could be, could be finished.
So are we not
into-
preventing them from,
Well, right now it's just 2,400 square feet of living space, but there's
Yeah.
nothing,
If you have like, because
Yeah.
most, like the townhouses in Richfield, you go up half to everything, or you go down half, and it's included space.
right.
So he's saying
Right, but I'm not-
2,400 not included that, and then it ends up being like 3,600, you know?
Now, I'm just thinking of condo I lived in Grafton, you know, half the owners finished off the basement.
Yeah.
but we
Just
don't,
because it, you know,
yeah. But I-
not with a permit or anything, just because they could. But, you know,
But
so,
we wouldn't want to prohibit that, would we?
I don't, well, I mean, if we're saying 2,400 square feet, so they finished 2,400 square feet, you've got a big attic and a walkout basement. You've now got, you know, basically a 4,000 square foot house.
Well,
Off the books.
I guess the way I was
You know,
looking.
so I'm just looking at, you know, do we want to make it, we're going to put a restriction in there to, you know, effectively prevent that?
I would not want to.
Okay.
Well, but all the
personally.
townhouses in Richfield are all built that way, where you walk in at a level,
Yeah.
and you go up a half level to the kitchen, living room, and then up to the, or you go
Yeah,
down a half
But
level to.
none of those have a basement.
But then you go down a half
Yeah.
level, you go down a half level to what was our second living room.
Right.
And all,
Like-
the-
Already included in the.
but that was included.
Yeah.
So what Mark is saying is.
If you have an unfinished
I want to
basement,
make sure,
yeah.
yeah.
I know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess what I was gonna say is if the developer's doing it and they're finishing the basement, that should be included in your 2,400.
If they're finishing, the if they're not,
But if they're not, and then later the homeowner says, hey, I wanna finish my basement,
right.
I wouldn't wanna prohibit them from
Is a
doing
walkout
that.
considered a basement? Like, you know, if in one side it's ground level, like what's considered a basement?
Yeah, it's a walkout
That's, yeah, the
basement.
pocket basement.
I don't know. Do you want to change the word living to livable?
Is that,
That's one suggestion.
I don't know.
is that
Or
different?
finishable?
I don't know.
2,400 finishable square feet?
Well, I guess
Yeah.
I wouldn't wanna prohibit that.
Because if it is a
I mean,
basement.
2,400 square feet is already not, is already pushing the limits of
It's
a
different,
cottage.
it's different, because if there is,
Yeah,
if there is a basement, you don't want to have to include the basement into living space.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Well, they don't, I mean,
Unless
that's
they
not
finish it.
included.
Yeah, and
a house
typically, even when
today.
you sell your house, your basement
Yeah.
square footage is not allowed to be included.
Yeah,
If
mine's
you
not.
finish your attic, that's different,
Right.
and it's a livable space, that can be considered into your square footage, but your basement's usually not supposed to be included in your square footage when you list it.
So maybe we'll just leave it as is. Seems like we can get into some weird legalese, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, if you had an example from someone else that had a
Different
regulation like that.
Yeah,
I know what you're saying though.
yeah. I guess I mean, I just, look at the size of those and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
people are gonna finish, attics and basements and God knows what else. It's just
I know what you're saying.
convert their garage into a.
But I think we also have to realize, I mean, the intent here was the majority of them to be over 55, so there's
Yeah.
not gonna be a lot of, I
Right.
mean,
They're not
it's gonna be one story. They're not gonna be wanting to go upstairs,
All
I
right,
guess is what I.
parking bylaw. Did it have notes on this one? I think it did. Parking.
Oh, I forgot to give you the ITS
That's
stuff.
okay. We have time.
So,
Can you shoot me an email
I
and
will.
just say?
first of all, I'd really like your reduced list.
Okay, is it easier to follow?
I have some ideas to reduce it even more, but,
Okay.
so,
Fred will be happy.
used car sales, is that even, used car sales even allowed in Bolton?
It is allowed.
Yeah.
It is? I thought it was.
It's through Board of Selectmen though.
Okay, so that's fine. How big is Paragon? It's 200,000?
I think it's less than that, but it's,
Two-
maybe it's
250?
300, yeah.
So I'm just trying to, the calculation, so one space per eight, so that's like 300 spots. How many spots do they have?
I don't
A lot
know.
more than
Their site
300,
plan does, I looked on their site plan, it didn't.
They have
didn't
parking
show it.
behind it.
I
They have
think
on the
do.
side.
They
in
must
front.
have
They
way
significant
more, I
parking.
think a ton.
I was just wondering if we should make the 800 number 1,000 or increase it more.
The front
If it-
parking lot never gets used.
I'm just saying it's the 800, does that create too many spaces? If it's like, even, it could be a big facility, but it might not need that many spaces. I'm just wondering if we can make that number 1,000 or 1,200.
I would leave it, that was a number that was in similar towns that we looked at, so.
And
But
we're
I
think
also
that's-
including
yeah.
research and development labs in that
Well, in that
category,
case, it's
so-
cubicles and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, so that
Yeah,
might
so
be
I would-
appropriate.
And lab space and other, I mean,
Yeah,
I think,
I think that's reasonable.
they can always request a waiver from that.
Yeah.
Okay.
If they're coming in with fully automated factory where there's 4 people,
And
then,
Oh,
they,
yeah,
and they
yeah,
certainly
yeah.
know what their parking number
Yeah.
needs to be then at the ordinance.
And then, so my only other comment was, so you have all these examples of recreation, handball, racquetball. Can we just say recreation space and then say so recreation, which includes bowling alley and swimming, and say 1 space per employee plus 1 per 3 or 4 persons predicted on premise or whatever, or
What are
3
you
or
talking
4.
about?
So she has, golf course is a formula, bowling alley is 4 spaces per alley, swimming pool, 1 per this.
Those are all completely different type of recreation.
I understand, but could you
I
just
would
say
not-
recreation, could you just say 1, just because we're not gonna have any, could you say
I
1
would
space
want-
per employee plus 1 per, 4 people of the max
I would not
utilization?
recommend that, I would leave it.
I would leave it.
Okay,
I
fine,
would leave it.
all right.
Fine.
We've got to tweak Brad on this a little bit here, it's.
No, all right, that's fine. It's much smaller than this, so I'm good.
Yeah, we're all on one page now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, and I had, no other comments on this.
Except for I need to, this schedule, I need to get her the ITS recommendations.
Any other comments on this one?
I just had one little comment on off-site parking. I realized I had duplicate language, so.
What section?
On page 4, letter B, it says off-site parking, blah, blah, blah. If the applicant can demonstrate that the on-site and off-site uses have non-competing peak demands, and then if you go down to D, at the very end of that paragraph, I had added shared parking for mixed use under section 7B shall apply for off-street parking spaces provided by a separate private property, and that essentially says the same thing, if you refer back to that section, so I think I can just take that.
Just to the,
reference.
that's fine.
The
So what
sentence
portion?
or D?
Just the sentence in D at the very
Okay,
end.
all right, yep. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, and that's it for that one.
Okay.
Lot coverage. So no A is wrong. This is, talks about the 8%, I don't know.
It's wrong.
Well, it says maximum lot coverage shall be 8%.
I have it italicized, so that means it's gonna be taken.
Oh, that's taken out.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. Okay. Sorry about that.
No, no worries. Note C is new.
Notes.
I forgot to underline it. I'll do that.
Oh, this is, yeah, exactly what we talked about. Okay, yep, that's fine.
And that only applies to the open space for industrial.
Right.
I think this is in pretty good shape, actually.
Yeah, no, I think it's all good.
The only thing were we gonna address, so I brought this up with you, Erica, is,
Yeah.
so the mixed use overlay is currently at
10%.
10%. So if we move limited business to 20%, the whole, so originally, you know, limited business and business is 8%, and they got the 2% bonus for doing the mixed use overlay 10%, which still would make them do it. So what I was thinking is if we did mixed use overlay and we put it to 25%, so there's like a 5% bonus for doing the mixed use.
Sounds good.
But would that be here, or we'd have to?
No, we
should
have
do
to
separate.
amend that. It's separate.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'd have to, a separate amendment.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, does that number seem right? I know you didn't put it in the packet this time, but you did have, from last meeting, she had if you go back and look, she had a calculation on mixed use and residences versus that, and,
I was just using the same thought process
Yeah.
we were using for the cottage overlay, but I agree with you,
Yeah.
I don't think that
Yeah.
same thought process should
Okay.
apply to this, so we can take that out of the equation. However, I do think that Jonathan Keep made a good point that when MAPC was helping us create that district, they had done some visuals and some studies on the actual properties and what the site constraints were, and he had mentioned that those particular sites could only handle so much coverage.
Mhm.
So I want to go back to see if I can find those numbers, because
Yeah,
I
yeah.
hate to set a number that makes absolutely no sense.
no, I agree.
So,
Right, yeah.
because I know there's gonna be somebody, particularly like a Ken Troop, for example, that worked on that, that's gonna know that and be like, this doesn't make any sense, why are we modifying that? I just wanna make sure that we have that.
Yeah, so definitely do that work
Yeah.
and make sure that the 20%, I think the 30% for industrial makes perfect sense, especially with the undeveloped lot. But, and I know you had the picture of the 20% on the Frida's property and what that looks like. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I think this schedule, I think is great, I think
Yeah.
it's perfect the way it is. I'm just talking in terms of the mixed use, let's make sure that 25% is the right number for
right,
the
because there
main
was,
property.
yeah, 'cause you need
Yeah.
the septic for the housing. And I think the intent of the mixed use is that it's a balance, so take that 20% number, 10% is residential, how many units is that? Can the land handle that type? And then if not, work it back, and then maybe work it back up and see where you're at. I
Yeah,
don't know. But the intent of the mixed use is that you get a bonus for doing it. So, I mean, it feels like it should be a little higher than,
Yeah, that one.
right, no, makes sense.
marijuana.
I have not had an opportunity to really update this yet, so I'm gonna do that
So I looked at,
next week.
so you're intending to put it right in the medical marijuana?
No, I'm just using what we have established for the medical marijuana. I had said at the last meeting, I would take that as the template, and then I would modify that based on your input. But that would sort of at least give us a starting place.
So
Of
this
what that process would
RMD,
be.
retail marijuana.
RMD, that's not even the right terminology. Like I said, I have to.
So don't even look at this as what you said.
We'll look at it, but look at it in the sense that, okay, we're gonna apply the special permit process. you know, there's a section in there for offsets to residential and to where
Well, so I
children
wanna talk
con-
about that.
Yeah, so exactly, we can modify that.
Okay, so I'm not gonna even talk about this in specifics, but, so we talked about where we left off is really, let's do the same thing as medical marijuana, which is we allow it in all non-residential zones, but then we put in all these offsets, which ultimately just allows it in industrial zone. So my thinking was, for the recreational marijuana, just make it an industrial zone only. Take out the 1,500-foot offset from where children congregate. Leave the 500-foot offset from residential, that's building to building, right?
I'm sorry, what was the 1,500 foot again?
From where kids congregate, schools, daycares.
So you're not gonna have any offset?
Industrial only, so,
Okay.
yeah,
okay.
so recreational marijuana is allowed in industrial, and there's no offset. So if Paragon wants to put in a daycare,
Mhm. They could still have.
they can have it, but they
could
can't
have some
block, yeah, they can't block.
Facility, but then you still have a 500 foot offset for any residential.
I mean, I think that's fine, it's just keeping the building, the closest point of the building from there to a house on Bolton Woods Way has to be 500 feet.
Do you think that there should be any, I mean, to get rid of 1,500 feet, you don't think that there should be any?
I'm saying it's allowed in industrial and that you can't put a blocker daycare in there.
Wait, and that you can't?
Yeah, by taking out that 1,500 square feet thing.
Right, that's what's problematic about offsets because,
1,500 feet, that's
1,500 feet, yeah.
Yeah.
Then, yeah, so,
So we had this map, we said, hey, look, you could put in all these residences, I mean, you could put in all these non-residential lots. Skinner, 626, up and down the road, whichever ones they are. And then we put in all these offsets and it blocked every single one except for industrial.
Yeah.
so, but with industrial, if you allow it to go in there, and then someone puts a daycare in there as well, you don't want the two right next to each other, right?
Well, if Paragon puts in a daycare,
Yeah.
I'm saying that shouldn't prevent.
Oh, I don't want it to prevent it, and I get that, but I don't know if I'm okay with no offset.
Well, okay, but so if Paragon, if you're talking about, in one portion of Paragon, they have a marijuana thing, and then the other portion, they put daycare, you know, that's their fault, you know? That's poor planning by them, they're the owner.
Yeah, I still might want some regulation there. I guess, I mean, I would,
We can't, so we have to put it in one spot, I mean.
yeah.
And then the other thing is, on medical marijuana, I think we should adjust it to do the same thing. Because if a daycare goes into Paragon
They can't have a medical facility.
in Cobham, which you said medical marijuana's actually looked at Cobham. right?
they have, yeah.
And so what happens if they go in and then a daycare goes in? It's a grandfather?
I believe it's
Yeah.
grandfather, it's already in use.
So that my thought is,
Yeah, but you also don't want somebody on Bolton Woods Way to say, okay, I'm gonna open the daycare in my house and block Cobb
Right.
that way too, so.
That's a really good point, we never
Yeah.
thought about that.
yeah, but you could. So my thought is, allow it, if we are gonna allow it, which I don't think we're gonna go the ban route, industrial only, 500 foot from resident, and that's it. No setback from where kids congregate. And that's what I'm thinking.
You know offhand how long the Paragon building is?
How long?
Yeah,
I don't know.
okay.
If I had access to the internet right now, I would measure it in GIS, but I'm not.
I mean, we're just talking about Paragon. We're talking about Paragon, Cobham, and undeveloped lot.
I just don't like the idea of no setback. I don't think someone would ever, I'd like to think someone would never put the two right next to each other. But,
I mean, then say 500 feet if you want that or something.
Or the board could consider putting it in more than just the industrial district and then include some type of offset as well.
Well, then we're back to where we were.
No,
Well, we
not to
don't
the
need
same
1,500
extent,
feet.
not 1,500 feet,
Yeah.
maybe it's 500 feet or whatever. Something that allows it to go into, let's think about some of the other properties in town. Where else would we feel comfortable having it?
could we, I mean, even if it was like a 200-foot setback or something, I mean, it's,
Well, 500, you know, if you're gonna do something, just do 500, the same as the residential.
yeah, I guess that's,
Well,
Is it everybody asked a question? I was just curious.
Just state your name.
Yeah,
State your
sure.
name. State your name.
Yeah, so Sean Searle, Sugar Road. In terms of the industrial park, is it like economically enticing for a business to really come to that area? And I don't know what you've discussed in previous meetings, so I wouldn't want to bring you back if you've already
For the
discussed.
business? Or for
Yeah,
the
so I'm
town?
just saying, if there are other areas within town and the board was to say, all right, the industrial area is gonna be the only place that a facility would come to, is it enticing? Does it really matter to the business? Or are you saying, okay, this is the only place you can come, and then the business itself would say, well, that's not really an area I'd be interested in? I'm just curious if you guys have had it.
Well, if it's a manufacturing or growing facility, it only makes sense there, you know. I guess the question is retail, but I argue that it's a destination business, you know. If somebody's going to buy it, they're gonna go into the it's not like a window shopping type thing, like, oh, marijuana, yeah. I wasn't thinking of that, you know. It's not like, I personally don't picture it as 626. Maybe, you know, I think others on the board.
Because I have seen, like, in Colorado, when I've gone on ski trips, the areas where it seems to be doing well, it's almost in some of the plazas where they are, in terms of the retail, not obviously growing or manufacturing,
It's
but
almost like a vapor shop when you see those.
it's,
Yeah.
the way they make it seem, it is meant to actually entice business from the street, depending on the town. I mean, if people are coming to Bolton, they may not necessarily be coming here to look for
That's, I mean, it's not
marijuana
like,
per se.
it's not like it's a college town or,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
fancy-
Although we get
fancy
enough
fruits.
commuter traffic through that would be.
But there are no businesses anywhere in the state currently, right, for retails?
No,
Not yet,
yeah,
not
no,
yet.
So, I mean,
no.
the first.
I think the fact that we're over 495 is enticing though.
So you wouldn't want a country covered, so it's one-stop shopping?
Yeah,
Get your
I would-
lunchies, get your.
I wouldn't
beer, get your-
I wouldn't mind driving down a little bit, and then I could hit Slater's on the way back.
I think it's just that the industrial zones aren't really great for a retail establishment. I think they're perfectly good for manufacturing, but not for retail. Right? What is someone gonna, I mean, those buildings at Cobham are that's
No,
not cited for retail.
no, it's not, well, I'm sure they could carve something out of some entrance, you know.
Mm. What is our zoning on liquor stores? Do we have anything specific? Where they can go,
Mark, you might
setbacks?
know this better than I do from Board of Selectmen standpoint, because it depends on the liquor license, right, that the town can hold. Oh, just in terms of where they can go?
Yeah.
Yeah, where
Oh,
where
that's
they can
just
go.
commercial, that's
Just
retail.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
No setbacks and stuff like that?
No,
no.
So I don't know why we treat this any different than liquor for retail.
You have a point there, however, I think if we were to open it up to commercial retail, then I would want setbacks.
Do you want
And-
setbacks on liquor stores? Is the liquor store right across from
I
the high
actually,
school?
I know, I don't think that's the best placement at all. Now, if I was a teenager, maybe that'd be great.
Kids aren't,
Yeah.
I doubt the kids are going over there.
I mean, it's tough, just because you're coming from a philosophy of people either are all for it or all against it, you know.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I would have put a setback on where liquor stores could be, located as well, but that's not on the table here.
I'm also, I'm not just thinking about this personally, I'm just thinking about getting that, that extra percentage of no's to say yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have a good point, though, of, it may not be reasonable to just limit it to industrial. It's a retail thing, I mean, it's a retail item, people, it's not the medical component.
I think, the Friedis building, there's no residential around there.
There will be.
I mean,
Bolton. Or,
Sugar.
Craftsman Village.
Crescent Village, yeah, but that is, how far back from?
Yeah, I don't know, I couldn't even more.
If somebody went into where Clinton Savings Bank was, they have the vault there for storage, and, they have the drive-through already for them there, and, but,
So, okay.
with that, I mean, think about a location like that.
So I think we
There's no
can,
real residential, there's no, it's,
so I think we can agree that manufacturing, growing, testing, industrial only, 500 foot from residences, and then say 500 foot from where kids congregate.
How far is Bolton Woods way from Cobham?
I think 650 would have hit it, but 500 was clear. I remember Dave Lindsay wanted to make it 750 or
Yeah,
800.
something like that, yeah.
Something
yeah.
like that, so it would have cut it off, but 500 was clear, but 650 or 700 was
So
not.
if we do 500 for where children congregate, that would, again, if a daycare were to go into either of those buildings, it wouldn't be allowed
Why, it's 500 feet from,
within the building. If they put a daycare in one, I
if they
mean,
put a daycare in the building, then that's on the owners, if you want to have, it's like, come on.
Did you say that they were grandfathered in though? If
it
the,
depends on which order they go. If a
First.
dispensary goes in first, then daycare moves in.
you're saying
Dispensary is-
5
is-
years before that happened, and by then a daycare maybe would have already moved on.
I mean, but you're talking about, if Paragon puts one in, 500 feet doesn't hit Cobham, right?
no, so I guess the important question
Then
is,
you're spot zoned.
I need to first
Well, no, you're not.
No.
Paragon,
no,
why
that's
don't
what's
they
on
done
it.
it?
No, they're all eligible for it. It's a matter of, if.
Yeah, do you want
if
marijuana or
Paragon-
do you want kids?
Yeah, if Paragon decides that a daycare is a good draw for their tenants, then they're gonna do that over a dispensary.
So if Paragon already has the daycare, which I will find out in the next week or two, I'll make sure to get that answer. If they have, then that takes Paragon out of the equation, and then now we're only left with Cobham and that vacant parcel.
That's two.
I think that
Well, where else
we
you
should
gonna have
create a
enough-
bylaw that actually works. I don't
Well,
think we should
well,
be
then I
creating
said
a
take it
bylaw.
out. I said take it
Yeah.
out, then take it out. That's fine, I don't
Yeah.
care. That's what I originally said.
Yeah,
Well, that goes back to my question, how big is how long is the building? Is it 500
right.
feet from the door or 500 feet from the overall building?
I mean, yeah,
You know,
if, and Paragon's one owner, so
Right.
I don't know. If they have the foresight of having a daycare next to, marijuana facility, then that's on them. Yeah.
The workers need to put their kids somewhere.
I'm fine with this, I'm fine with just the 500 foot residential and industrial, because that protects Bolton Woods Way.
Oh, I totally agree with that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Then the question is retail. Do we say all zones, but then we say, maybe we don't say, if we say 1,500 feet from kids, I think we determine that cuts out everything.
Yeah.
So maybe that number gets reduced. I guess, can you do a chart for next meeting? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm not the best
And
at
the-
GIS, so I'll have to see if I can, yeah.
The work may exist somewhere, because we had it for medical marijuana. We had all these maps.
I'll go back and see if I have those PDFs.
We had maps of 500 feet from where kids
Yeah.
congregate, 750, and we had, I remember with Doug's story, we're looking at all these
Yeah.
circles on the maps,
Yeah,
and we effectively blocked everything out. Sorry.
I may have only kept, yeah, I'll have to see what I kept from that research.
I mean, so, So do that for industrial.
Yep.
So I don't know, it's interesting.
So what type of offset are we talking about for retail that I should be looking for?
Well, just do a range of 500 to 1,500 and see what it,
Maybe 500,000 and,
So we know 1,500 already, that,
to do 500,000.
yeah, 500 and 1,000.
okay.
And we can interpolate our eyes between them.
And what do the kids congregate? The schools, high school and elementary.
Daycare.
There's that daycare at the church across the street. I think we even did churches, because kids congregate at churches.
Mhm.
Yeah, the schools,
Yeah, yeah,
playgrounds,
Sunday schools.
daycares, libraries, churches, athletic playing fields, scout camps, golf courses.
So athletic field, so the lacrosse field, that was a spot.
Mhm.
Was there anything else east of 495? I don't think so.
I don't think so, that's why I've kind of worked out.
Right. And actually, so it left Slater's and Skinner, but there's like Bruce lives above Slater's, so I think that's a residence, so I don't know if it hits Skinner or not. I can't remember if Skinner was allowed to have medical or not.
But Slater's, you know, if Bruce were to sell his business and move, that potentially could be a location.
For retail. Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
So let's lock down the growing, growing, manufacturing, and industrial, and then we'll continue talking about retail. One other point on this, I don't know, Teresa's listening. She brought up to you that farmers want to grow it, which means you have to allow it in residential, ultimately. But so, I tried to do some research on this, and I sent a question to you and Don and to ask, so right to farm community, I think in Massachusetts currently, last I read, excludes marijuana as the right to farm. So, pretty much that's saying that
You can farm anything else but marijuana.
you can grow anything else but marijuana.
Right, I would agree with that.
And I think there's bills on the floor to try to change that, but I'm not sure it will get changed.
Well, I mean, the other thing that we could do would be, that growing could be allowed in industrial or in any residential lot greater than some acreage, or with some, 1,500-foot setbacks or something. To, so that, I mean, if you
allow in some residential area,
yeah, I mean, if you've got a large,
But, yeah.
reasonable sized farm, and you want to put up a greenhouse and grow, as long as you're.
I mean, do we allow, do we say just outdoor grow, or do we say, do you want some big industrial building? So, when this came up,
any industrial building would have to, any building would have to go to the building inspector and probably.
Yeah, you're not gonna have a big industrial building on a residential lot.
But that's what these places are, it's a big industrial
It's a
building.
big greenhouse.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big greenhouse with.
Tin wall, it's.
But I think if people wanted to grow it as a side business and have a greenhouse.
Yeah, do we allow it as an accessory use and not primary use?
Do we take do we have to write in some type of scope of operation or something? I don't know, I mean, if I was in a house next to a large residential lot and all of a sudden it became, a marijuana farm,
yeah.
I'm not sure I'd be too happy about that.
No, but.
Well, yeah,
And-
if you've got large, if it's
But if you get
setback
the
1,000
setbacks,
feet or
yeah,
1,500
1,500 feet,
feet,
that's true.
or, and just put, grab, I don't know if that's the right number or not, but, I mean,
Well,
so if you're next to a 50-acre farm,
So.
and they want to, out in the middle, put in a greenhouse.
This was a big
and-
discussion point for medical marijuana because we were saying, should we allow growing in residential? And I know that I was against it, James was against it. It was like half and half. I forget who was for and against, but my thinking was, and others were against it, were saying, no, now you're gonna have all this traffic through residential zones and people that, aren't really, it's not like on 495, you come off 495, you shoot to, you're on a major road, you have unknown people driving through back roads, through people's neighborhoods, and
If
It's just- it doesn't make
If
sense
it's a
in
grow
our-
facility, it's not gonna, it's not a,
If it's a grow
I'd say
facility,
if
yeah.
it's just grow facility, you're not
Yeah.
gonna have that kind of traffic.
true.
I think if we don't,
I mean, personally,
I think, if we don't allow it in kind of the agricultural areas, I think it's, at some point, the right to farm regulations will change to allow it. And then
Well,
we're,
and then it's
now they're
exempt-
saying,
it's an
right to
exemption
farm
anyway.
says it, and we're saying, well, you can only do it industrial. I think there's,
well,
a lawsuit waiting to happen.
yeah, but if
given the amount of
we
money.
don't touch anything, and then the right to farm all of a sudden approves it, do we have to do anything?
I can't imagine that they would approve it. Well, I don't know. Because it's something that is used to create a road.
I'll tell you what, if we allow it, if we in this bylaw allow residential, it will never pass. Whether you think it's good or not, it's just not gonna pass. I mean, that's my
If
opinion.
it becomes a right to farm thing, then it becomes an exempt use on the,
That's what I was just saying.
agriculture, and then no special permit process would apply. I can't
It's
imagine the
it
state
supersedes-
going that direction, I mean,
Well, but I'm
because at
just-
the end of the day, you're growing it.
Right, in Mark's
To make
in
cars.
Mark's thing of the right to farm gets adjusted, and it is allowed, that would supersede our zoning, right? Right to farm supersedes.
Right.
So we don't,
So it doesn't matter.
Doesn't
it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Okay, it's almost 10.
Okay, let me
Let's
just
see,
sign
yeah.
those,
So you're trying out? Is it right?
Checking it out, see.
How many people do we have? We have two at
You
least.
should send
right?
us first one, right?
we have two
I'll sign
member,
it below.
residents that are interested, right, thank you.
What else are you doing?
This is the lot release for 19A at Century Mill. The board actually released this like
Yeah.
a year or two ago. It just never got signed.
All right, and then schedule for January.
And this is just standard every second and fourth Wednesday. I haven't checked the school's vacation schedule, which I
yeah.
can do. I'd like to at least tentatively approve it, and then I can check it.
Yeah, anyway, I won't be here February 28th, but
I don't know if I don't.
Consider the meeting minutes for approval.
I read through the minutes, they look good to me.
Okay.
Thrilling.
Yeah, no, February's fine, it's after. Oh, are we really gonna have a hearing on February 14th?
We've all been married, it's like,
I actually, yeah, I didn't even notice that. It's funny.
don't we do usually the second meeting in February?
Can we do February 7th? I don't know.
Where's the schedule? I'm like,
You know,
my papers are
actually,
too
let me,
shuffled right now.
yeah, we can tentatively say the 14th, but I have to check also when that
Oh, okay.
hearing for the articles needs to be done by. So that really will dictate what that meeting date will be.
Are we signing something else?
I mean, I think we're fine to have a regular meeting, but maybe the hearing should be the 28th, if we can have it then.
So we talked about doing a forum for the cottage overlay, end of January.
Yeah, I think the 24th we can do that. Should we
Okay,
just
so-
include the cottage overlay, or should we talk
I
about it?
think, should we do all of the bylaws?
Let's do an open forum for all of them.
Okay, so my next sort of comment is, more than likely, some of those hearings are gonna get continued.
On the 10th.
So I can schedule the forum for 7:30. Is it gonna be an hour forum and then we switch to the hearings? It's gonna be a very long night. Or do we wanna do the forum a different night? Especially,
So what hearings, so we have Tadmore, 258's coming up,
so we have Hudson.
105,
Mhm.
just those three.
And a backland lot. Backland lots are easy, that'll be
Yeah.
15, 20 minutes, but it's still,
But presumably those three are
so we have.
gonna be both on the
We
10th
have
and
four.
24th.
We have 4 hearings on the
On the
10th.
10th. Yeah.
Including
And
the
then,
backland.
more than likely, we're gonna have 2 on the
the
next day,
24th.
the 24th.
So what is this again? This is a,
Do you think a lot of people are gonna show up to this?
I don't know.
forum?
it's,
can we,
Depends on how we advertise it.
can we
if it's
do
just cottage
the,
overlay,
and on the
probably not.
24th and start earlier?
If
If
we
it's
start,
all,
Oh,
I
yeah,
mean, we
that's-
always do
do that
one.
too.
Yeah, what about doing it on the 24th and just starting earlier? So we could potentially not stay later. I mean, I can do 7 o'clock or even, well, 6:30 gets a little tough, but.
Um, 24th. So we're talking about 2 hearings.
When do we usually do the?
We usually do a public hearing, so we usually do a public hearing on the 28th, but that's already past, you know,
Of January or February?
February. So when do we typically do the public hearing?
It's usually the first meeting. in
Oh, the first
February,
meeting, so we
yeah.
do a meeting in February, but at that point, the bylaws are written. You know, if there's any final comment from the input that we want to adjust anything, you know, we don't really have a chance to do that, so the thought with the open forum is, you know, if there were any kind of like,
Comments and stuff, we
that
can
will, like,
incorporate them.
or if we saw like that, you know, you know, if we just did this in the bylaw, maybe it would pass. It would give us the chance to,
I can see it on the medical, or the marijuana, no one's gonna care about the cottage one. Are they?
so let's just schedule,
Like, has
I
anyone
mean, so then,
submitted
do we
any
think we
question at all about, no.
let's schedule.
But then again, I don't know,
We've been talking about
we've
this
been talking
for-
about it, but I haven't really advertised it, so I need to get it on the website and.
Do we think a half hour is enough time to discuss stuff?
Well, let's schedule an open forum for an hour.
So-
To go over the
So maybe meet at
bylaws.
6:30. We'll talk about between 6:30 and 7:30 and then start our normal hearing at 7:30.
6:30, I don't know. That's like people are doing dinner and stuff.
I know, but I don't wanna be here till like 11 o'clock
Yeah.
either.
Let's do 7 to 8 that, 8 o'clock do one continued, 9 do the other, so the
All
latest.
right, so we'll
it would be
start at
10.
half hour early.
Yeah,
So we'll do,
7.
And in that evening, I'll schedule no business.
Yeah.
It'll just be the hearings. separately.
okay,
So 7 will be
that's
the
fine.
forum, an hour,
we'll do 7 to 8,
however we spend the time,
and then we'll start the hearings at 8
we'll,
o'clock.
we'll run through the bylaws. I assume that if nobody shows up, then we're just gonna be sitting there waiting for the hearing at 8.
Yeah, which is.
We can just
yeah,
work on the
that's-
bylaws.
Huh?
That's gonna suck if we're sitting there for an hour,
Oh,
because no one shows up, because no one's gonna show up.
I mean, if we.
So the
advertise
forum
them-
will be on all the articles?
Yeah,
Okay, so I will start advertising ASAP.
so what are you
How do-
thinking? What do you want then?
No, I mean, I think the only people who are really gonna care about is the marijuana one, and we're not even close on that right now.
We'll be close, I don't know.
Hope so.
maybe.
Maybe.
Well, we better be, because the 14th, we have to present our final article. Or, I mean, we have to be.
Okay.
So 7, yeah, do that, 7 o'clock. Okay, do we have to vote to approve the minutes?
No, you can just sign them.
Okay.
Oh, did I just
Where are
accidentally
they?
took them, sorry.
Well, that would've made it quick.
What do we need to do? Sign where?
Just initial.
Anyway.
Oh.
I think just initial. right?
Yeah, that's fine. And then, do you want me to advertise the forum in the newspaper?
Yeah, let's advertise as much, I'll put it on Facebook.
And then I'll
Okay.
send you it.
I mean, can we, when we advertise it, can we just say at 7 PM and not
Yeah.
say 7 to 8? And then we can always,
Yeah.
yeah. So that-
Well, I will likely continue a hearing to 8 PM now.
Yeah,
You won't continue hearing to 7:30?
Oh, well, it's whatever you guys want to do. I thought we wanted an hour for the forum.
We did, I just was going back to
I mean,
your point.
Well, or do we want to start the hearings at 7 and start, and have the
if
forum?
we're delayed,
until-
even though it says 7:30, can we start the hearing at 8? if the
No, you
forum's done?
can't.
We'd have to open it and then close, or continue it till 8 or something.
I need to do that to the applicant.
Yeah.
Just do 7 to 8 and then,
And then we can just
what's the
say-
potential, so it's what, it's 258 and it's Tadmore?
For the continuations?
Yeah.
No, Tadmore, I think we can
It's gonna be
close.
done.
May close
It'll
on
be
the-
the Von Hill, I'm guessing, could go one more, maybe not, I don't
Maybe
know.
not.
But,
Well, so, what do we, so we haven't scheduled anything for the 24th.
no,
So we would do 258 definitely will happen at
Yes.
8 o'clock. And then if Fawn Hill or Tadmore is going that way. So we might not even have a 9 o'clock hearing. It might just be an 8 o'clock hearing.
Yeah, no, it was more of just if we thought we were gonna be sitting around for an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's do the hearings
Well,
first.
we'll,
and then the
we'll be at a
forum.
library, we can go
After,
check
so.
out some books. And
Are we doing the library?
As long as it's warm there, then I'm.
I think so. I think we'll do it
do you want to do it at the library? Because that, I have to
for the
schedule
huge
it.
crowd.
Standing or bowling?
I don't know, let's,
I think here is fine, personally. But
okay, just do it here
could-
then.
there's a couple more hurdles if I have to schedule at the library.
All right, yeah, because
Get
filming's
approval and
tough.
And film, they have to, the film crew hates it, or the back.
All right, just do it here.
Right, I mean, say it on TV, but.
If people have to stand, then,
Okay.
Okay.
I can't imagine that it would be more than looking for here.
Motion to adjourn.
That's it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So you sure you still want to be a part of this?
So question, on this Tadmore,
Seems exciting.
Christmas.
I love it.
little